Chapter 1107 Sky Demon Vast Habitat. 2 days after meeting with Zhong Shou, Su Xiaoxiao calmly stepped into the vast habitat, the place known as Yuan Demon Residence. The place where Wushang Yuan Demon stayed was totally different from the dark and evil atmosphere of the Yuan Demon Vast Habitat. It was like a celestial residence. The scenery was really beautiful. Demon path cultivation methods twisted one's humanity. Even one's sense of beauty would slowly become different. One would be bloodthirsty and would like those evil and evil styles. However, legend had it that when one cultivated the two paths, they would return to the same place. Su Xiaoxiao walked in unhurriedly, but the surrounding waiters all looked at her strangely, until she was in front of a pavilion. Su Xiaoxiao hesitated for a moment. However, in just a blink of an eye, she resolutely stepped in. This meeting would decide her life and death. However, she couldn't avoid it. Greetings to Yuan Demon Lord. She knelt down and heard a sound in front of her. Only then did Su Xiaoxiao raise her head and look into the pavilion. The white-haired Li Bieshue was standing with his back facing her. There was no one else here except for Han Qing, who was staring at her furiously. Maybe because he had just recovered and lost a lot of energy, Han Qing's face was still devoid of blood. Su Xiaoxiao. Han Qing gritted his teeth. His eyes seemed to be burning with flames. Don't you think that you need to give me an explanation today? Explanation for what? Su Xiaoxiao looked confused and then suddenly said, I'm really sorry. Xiaoxiao was anxious to save Junior Brother that time and didn't think carefully before acting. I really didn't expect that things would turn out like that, and I nearly killed Junior Brother. Her words were really sincere, and her eyes were really sincere. Han Qing gritted his teeth and laughed coldly in his heart. Would it work if she didn't admit it? Even if Li Bieshue didn't deal with this woman today, once this top person of the demon path left, he had thousands of ways to deal with this woman. She actually, thinking back to that day when he was about to die and what she said to Zhong Shou, Han Qing's face started to twist. As long as one was a man, one wouldn't be able to accept such humiliation. Interesting. Li Bieshue chuckled, but he didn't look back. Instead, he focused on what was in front of him. The small lake with countless blooming lotuses in front of him was undoubtedly beautiful. However, what Li Bieshue was looking at was not the scenery, but the rhythm of the laws of heaven and earth. A small corner of the land could also bear witness to the great Tao. Xiao, I need an explanation for what happened that day. Su Xiaoxiao calmed herself down and said with a serious expression, I'm only teaching Junior Brother, Saint the Demonic Tao. Junior Martial Brother's life has been smooth sailing ever since he made his debut. Not only did he underestimate the heroes of the world, but he also underestimated our demon sect. He was also too negligent in guarding against us. Do you think that just because we're both from the devil path, we'll serve him loyally and won't take his life? When Li Bieshue heard this, he just casually said, He didn't say anything. Su Xiaoxiao didn't seem to care. If Junior Apprentice Brother is still like this in the future, don't be wary. Even if he didn't die in Su Xiaoxiao's hands, he would die in the hands of others. My demon sect pursues the survival of the fittest and the survival of the fittest. Both talent and temperament needed to be exceptional. At that time, even if he dies, he deserves it. Our demon sect venerables can save him once or twice, but can we always stay by his side and take care of him? Han Qing's eyes spat out flames. He wanted to retort, but his forehead was covered in cold sweat. At this moment, Li Bieshue had already turned around. His eyes were dark and cold, filled with a playful expression as he looked at him. What you said does make sense. Our demon sect people do things like that. Han Qing, you need to learn from this. If you die in the hands of others due to carelessness, I will kill you. Then, should I take revenge for you? Or should I be happy that there are so many talents in my demon sect? I'm really not sure. Han Qing didn't dare to say anything. He could only solemnly bow towards Li Bieshue. The latter didn't bother. Then, why did you have to use the Yuan Demon 7 Emotion technique, the only chance to improve? You knew that with me here, I definitely wouldn't let you die under that kid's sword. Did you really want to give birth to a demon fetus with him? Or are you unhappy with my previous arrangements? Or did you really fall in love with him? Apart from the last, it is both. Su Xiao raised her head. Her eyes were firm as she looked at Li Bieshue with a provocative gaze. Su Xiao and that Zhong Shou have only met a few times, so how could they be close? At most, she admired him. However, I'm really unhappy about the marriage with junior brother. How is junior brother Han Qing good enough for me? Han Qing's eyes were spitting out flames. He was so furious that he laughed. Not good enough? He was the most outstanding disciple in the demon sect during these few thousand years. The against the heaven demon technique he cultivated was a grade 12 world-destroying technique and was extremely close to grade 13. Numerous experts in the demon path had high hopes for him. He was seen as the person with the highest chance of stepping into End Realm after Blood, Saint Demon Lord. In the future, his achievements would definitely be above that of Blood Saint Demon Lord. The one who wasn't good enough was Su Xiao. It should be this woman's honor to receive his favor. If Yuan Demon wasn't here, and if he wasn't in front of Li Bieshue, he would have slapped her heavily. He would have used all sorts of methods to torture and humiliate this girl. Yuan Demon only wants a demon fetus. Then, Zhong Shou would be more suitable than junior brother. Su Xiao was really calm and didn't bother about Han Qing's gaze. Nine-tailed sky, Fox grasps the unlimited beginning and end Tao. His potential is even greater than against the heaven demon, and he has the right to create his own bloodline. His sword path talents are top in the world. Wouldn't such a talent be 100 times better than junior brother? Allow me to be direct, but junior brother Han Qing can't even compare to a single finger of Zhong Shou. As she said this, Su Xiao smiled. There is also the Liu family's world-burning blood eye and my 10,000 spirit embryo. With my 1,000 world-burning blood, I will definitely be able to give birth to a complete world-burning blood. Who knows, maybe our demon sect will be able to influence the Liu family. Li Bieshue's expression finally changed. He looked at Su Xiao seriously. I underestimated you. In terms of talent, you are far from Han Qing. However, in terms of personality, you are far above him. If Han Qing had the talent to cultivate the against the heaven demon technique, I wouldn't have to worry about the foundations of the cloud world. Han Qing was terrified. He wanted to speak, but Li Bieshue waved his sleeves and stopped him. However, you should know the dangers of the Yuan demon 7 emotion technique. Love is a double-edged sword. To make Zhong Shou tempted, I naturally have to treat him with true feelings. Su Xiao smiled bitterly. However, no matter if I win or lose, it won't affect Sir Yuan Demon taking the demon fetus. When Li Bieshue heard this, his gaze was uncertain and he was in deep thought. Su Xiao heaved a sigh of relief and relaxed her body. She knew that her future was in Li Bieshue's hands. However, she had already tried her best and couldn't do more. She could only wait for Wushang Yuan Demon's final decision. Do you think that what is done cannot be undone, and with the addition of the Liu family, I will agree? To let you break free from my control? When Li Bieshue spoke once more, it caused Su Xiao's heart to turn cold. As for Han Qing, he was delighted. However, in the next moment, Li Bieshue's eyes turned sharp as he looked outside. He muttered, Xian increasing technique. Zhong Shou, how is that possible? Let her in. The last sentence was spoken loudly, instructing the servants outside of Yuan Demon's residence. Then he waved his sleeves. All of you back down. This matter was simply too important. Even Han Qing didn't have the right to hear about it. However, right as the two of them were prepared to bow and leave, Li Bieshue's expression changed. Li Bieshue's eyes suddenly moved. Su Xiao, you can stay. Su Xiao and Han Qing were stunned once more. The latter could only leave helplessly. Su Xiao's eyes were filled with doubt. She instinctively felt that her fate might have changed. In less than 10 breaths, a woman who looked to be in her 20s had already walked into the room. Su Xiao recognized her. She was called Demon Lotus. Out of the hundreds of God Realm cultivators in the demon sect, she was really outstanding. She actually returned to the cloud world? Just as Demon Lotus was about to bow, Li Bieshue directly asked, Is it really the wings? How did you know? Did you see wrongly? Did this item really fall into Zhongsho's hands? When Lu Wushuang swept the world, Demon Lotus had just joined Demon Plant Valley. Due to a few seniors of the sect serving under Lu Wushuang, they coincidentally found out. Su Xiaoxiao's heart moved. Lu Wushuang was the third invincible overlord in the Cloud World after Xiangqu, Overlord, and before Ranwu King. That item was in the shape of a wing. It wasn't gold, jade, or stone. Demon Lotus was unable to see through it. That Xushuan sect was wiped out not long ago during the Middle Ancient Era. Along with its main mountain, it was thrown into the abyss. While speaking, Demon Lotus used illusions to form an image in the air. Li Bieshua looked closely, and his face became uglier and uglier. Energy surged, causing the energy of heaven and earth to start to move. A moment later, it calmed back down. It really is that item. Li Bieshua sneered and retracted his gaze. Seeing the confusion and curiosity on Su Xiaoxiao's face, he asked casually, "Are you curious about what this Xian increasing law containing wings is that made me lose my composure?" Su Xiaoxiao held her breath and didn't dare to reply. She knew that Li Bieshua's current emotions weren't stable. The spiritual energy of heaven and earth was still faintly fluctuating, which was proof enough. If he was not careful, he might be in trouble today. Legend has it that Lu Wushuang is the most useless of the four unparalleled overlords. The one who spoke was Demon Lotus. Those words are actually true. Lu Wushuang is the weakest out of the four of them, but he can still sweep the Cloud World and suppress numerous heroes. Even End Realm experts need to avoid him. What he relied on was this Xian increasing law containing wings. Su Xiaoxiao's brow rose up, and she started to feel curious. Madam Demon Lotus continued, "This divine treasure has increase and sustain God laws." Increase referred to growth, and sustain referred to blessing. This is why it is called the Xian increasing law containing wings. This item can raise the strength of any cultivator by several grades. It can also buff artifacts. Legend has it that if one is half a step to heaven-opening artifact after buffing it, one can become a heaven-opening god artifact. Chapter 1108. This godly treasure contains the two godly laws of increase and sustain. Increase refer to growth, and sustain refer to blessing. This is why it is called the Xian increasing law containing wings. This item can raise the strength of any cultivator by several grades. It can also buff artifacts. Legend has it that if a half-step heaven-opening artifact is buffed by it, one can become a heaven-opening god artifact. Heaven-opening god artifact? Even with Su Xiaoxiao's shrewdness, she couldn't help but exclaim. There were only a few heaven-opening god artifacts in this region, and none of them had landed in the hands of others. However, there were at least 5 half-step heaven-opening artifacts in this region. If one buffed by the Xian increasing law containing wings and reached the heaven-opening realm, one could even directly enter the true realm. So, if this god artifact really landed in Zhongsho's hands, what would happen? If he buffed it, he might be able to directly let Zhongsho cross God Realm and reach Saint Realm. At this moment, when he was still at Celestial Realm, he could use King Path martial arts to go up against Saint Realm Venerables in the Cloud World. If he got this artifact, he would be pretty much invincible under End Realm. Even if End Realm cultivators attacked, they would find it tough to wipe him out. She looked up and saw that Li Bieshua's face was extremely dark and sunken like water was about to drip out of it. No wonder Li Bieshua lost his composure just now. To the demon sect, this was no different from a nightmare. Demon Lotus's tone changed. However, I think that Zhongsho didn't recognize the background of this item. Li Bieshua's eyes flashed, and he looked coldly at Demon Lotus. "What are you trying to say?" Demon Lotus became more respectful when she heard this. Only a few people knew that Lu Wushuang had the Xian increasing law containing wings. Most of them didn't have any legacy books and only left a few words behind. No matter how knowledgeable one was, they wouldn't know where this item came from. Li Bieshua was deep in thought as he listened on quietly. Demon Lotus seemed to have been encouraged and continued. The artifact spirit of the god artifact sealed itself. Even the people from Tsang Xingdao might not be able to recognize him. Therefore, I am certain that Zhongshou will not be able to find out the origin and use of this item in such a short time. At most, he could only tell that this artifact was somewhat extraordinary. As long as this one is unable to activate the weapon spirit of the profound, increasing law containing wings, it will only be an ordinary piece of metal. Really? Li Bieshua said non-committally. Then how many people know about this? Only this junior. Demon Lotus had an indifferent expression as if she was talking about something normal. That day near the ruins of the Shushuan Gate, all those who witnessed this artifact were killed by me. There were no survivors. Only Zhongshou's subordinates. 30,000 cavalry and 400 spirit masters were all seen. However, she was truly helpless in this aspect. It would not be easy to slaughter these people, and the Deqian would definitely view them as mortal enemies. Luckily, these people were weak, and most of them were factionless cultivators, so it should be okay. However, this was also the biggest weakness. The demon sect was not the only ones who knew about the wings. The Taoist faction might have known about it too. In other words, I can take it back before Zhongshou finds out? Li Bieshue smiled and looked coldly at Demon Lotus. Only a few people knew about the profound, increasing law containing wings. That was because Lu Wushuang had a special relationship with the demon sect. At that time, Li Bieshue was coincidentally in the cloud world, so he knew a little more about it. Lu Wushuang died in battle, and this god artifact disappeared along with his descendants. He tried his best to search for it, but even after 100 years, he still couldn't find any traces of it. As time went on, he gave up. So, the artifact spirit of this artifact had sealed itself and was in deep sleep. It should have been damaged in the battle that year. Now that it appeared in the world, did it recover? Actually, even if other people saw the artifact, it wouldn't be much. They didn't know where it came from and didn't know its use. At most, they would be curious and wouldn't link it to a god treasure. As for the woman in front of him, she would be in danger if she stayed alive. Demon Lotus's face was covered in cold sweat. Li Bieshue's thick, killing, intense stabbed right in her heart. She gritted her teeth and knelt down quietly. She didn't dare to move at all and didn't dare to resist at all. I have to say, you are really smart, Li Bieshue chuckled and retracted his oppressive thoughts. His eyes were filled with admiration. To be able to suppress her greed and know that the artifact wasn't something she could see and decisively report it to him. Such a woman at least had enough self-awareness. Although she trained in magic, she still had some rationality. With a flick of his finger, a red pill shot towards Demon Lotus. She took it and was surprised. She bowed once more. Dragon Demon Energy Cultivating Pill? Thank you, Yuan Demon. A weird expression appeared in Su Xiaoxiao's eyes. Due to demon cultivators using up too much of their life essence when they reach Foundation establishment, most of their essence energy would be weak, and their cultivation wouldn't be able to improve. This Dragon Demon Energy Cultivating Pill was refined by Li Bieshue and given to Celestial Realm cultivators to strengthen their foundations. The Celestial Pill level was naturally huge. If one obtained one, it would be able to make up for their past losses. However, the production was low, and within 100 years, there were only 3. In the Demon Path, all the God Realm cultivators were looking forward to it. Li Bieshue nodded slightly and accepted it. This woman's talents weren't weak, and her personality was good too. She had the potential to reach Saint Realm, so he was willing to develop her. Within 40 years, you can enter secluded meditation within the vast habitat. Without my orders, you can't head out. Then, he looked towards Su Xiaoxiao. Li Bieshue's face was filled with a complicated expression. Su Xiaoxiao's heart shook. She was the most suitable person to take back the wings from Zhongshou's hands. At this moment, she firmly shook her head. Saint Venerable, since I'm going to use the Yuan Demon 7 emotion technique to make him feel emotional, then naturally, I have to treat him sincerely. If you want me to take this artifact, it will be tough on me. Li Bieshue shook his head. His voice was really cold. There is no need for that. What is this thing? Pretty much at the same time, Zhongshou was in the carriage, holding that black-winged iron piece in his hand. He was stunned. It wasn't gold, it wasn't jade, it wasn't stone. Zhongshou had tried it not long ago. He used the god-refined sword to slash it, but it wasn't damaged at all. This meant that the material of this item was at least heaven grade. Out of the heaven, earth, Xin, and Huang grade treasures, it was the top grade. Even the heaven grade level, this item was definitely one of the really precious ones. During this period of time, the god-refined sword had swallowed large amounts of wish god power and was slowly improving the quality of the sword. At this moment, it couldn't be considered a god treasure, but it was half a step god treasure. However, such a top-grade sword was unable to harm it at all. It couldn't even leave a white mark. His soul power and spiritual sense were also unable to reach in, being blocked out by a certain barrier. He was unable to understand its structure and was unable to make an accurate judgment. During this period of time, he had checked all the books in his memory and confirmed that there were no records of this item. As for the ruins from before, he had some ideas. Ancient Sichuan sect, one of the 3,000 Taoist sects, it was famous during the Middle Ancient era. It was once under Cibei Taoist lord, Tai Ching bloodline. The reason for its fall was most probably related to the split of the Kinzo sect. This information wasn't of much help to him. However, since this item flew out from the Sichuan sect ruins, it must have been there. It meant that it had appeared in the world, and someone had even used it before. However, Zhongshou thought back to the reply that Wei Su gave him. Song Xingdao's 7 sons. No one was able to recognize them. Senior Master Xiuguan actually left the cloud world. Just now, when he contacted Song Xingdao, he found out that Xiuguan had left a day ago. It was obvious that he knew that the battle between the Deqian, Taoist, Confucian, and demon factions had come to an end. This wasn't the time for the final battle to decide victory and defeat. However, since this person had left, the item in his hand was a little problematic. Instinctively, with Xiuguan's close to half a step end realm cultivation, even if he couldn't recognize this item, he could deduce its rough use. Although he could use the message talisman to contact it, he couldn't personally see it and was unable to help him identify it. The patterns on the surface seemed to be natural. It is a little similar to the Blood Moon Path. Is it a god artifact? Zhongshou shook his head. If it was a god artifact, it definitely wouldn't be so dead. For this item to be able to fly out from the Sichuan Palace, it should have some intelligence. I can't use normal spiritual iron to look at it. Unable to think clearly, Zhongshou didn't bother about it. He didn't have many treasures in his hands, but he had the illusionary heart mirror, the god-refined sword, and the royal demon god shuttle. His offensive and defensive artifacts were all top grade. The royal demon god shuttle could increase his movement speed to allow him to escape in times of danger. As for the other treasures, if they weren't special, they wouldn't be of much use. This black iron was just a small matter to him and wasn't worth him spending too much effort on. Shun Yuexian was a top blacksmith from the Mahists and would return from the celestial world in a few days. Maybe this person would recognize it. He didn't think about asking the Kinzo sect and the Buddhist faction for help. When the Sichuan Palace was wiped out, the Buddhist faction had just entered the cloud world. The foundations of the Kinzo sect couldn't even compare to that of Song Xingdao. Since the people of Song Xingdao didn't recognize it, then naturally the people of the Kinzo sect wouldn't know either. With a thought, he tossed this wing-shaped spiritual iron into his sleeves, the space where little gold was at. He allowed this little fellow to use its body to wrap up this black thing. Wanxiang could swallow all sorts of things in the world to improve its body. At this moment, due to absorbing the god wood, its body had accumulated a huge amount of essence energy. Who knows, it might be able to totally swallow this item. Even if it couldn't, at least being able to corrode the outer layer was not bad either. However, he himself didn't have much hope. Not bothering about this matter, Zhongshou started to focus on studying those demon books. This carriage pulled by 49 dragon horses was really quick, but it needed to take care of the cloud ships and guard iron cavalry. It took 3 days to reach Deqian. He waited here for 2 more days before Kong Yao returned. Chapter 1109. Although they arrived at Gantian Mountain first, Zhongsho insisted on waiting for Kong Yao to meet up before returning together to participate in the victory ceremony that Runbua was preparing. Compared to Zhongsho's full set of ceremonial guards, Kong Yao only brought a few celestial realm helpers to protect her. Seeing Zhongsho waiting here, although Kong Yao didn't say anything, her eyes were filled with sweetness that couldn't be dissolved. After we return, I am planning to cultivate in the Universe Light Hall for a period of time. Maybe because the war to conquer the 5 states in the south had consumed too much energy. Kong Yao's eyes were filled with exhaustion. Not only me, Zhong Yuan and Rin Tianxing are also planning to cultivate for a period of time. Although we can handle it now, we feel like we can't keep up. Zhongsho wasn't surprised. Long before they were in the south, Kong Yao had already revealed such intentions. The 3 of them were all unparalleled general talents, but due to too many mundane matters, their martial path and spiritual cultivation improvements weren't satisfactory. The 3 of them had trained their hearts enough. They just lacked the accumulation of cultivation. The most efficient cultivation method would be to use the Universe Light Hall that he brought from the first Dragon Hall. However, the timing was coincidentally when the Night Demon race might go all out to invade. It really wasn't the right time. Zhongsho was deep in thought as he looked at the few space artifacts in his sleeves. It seemed like he was going to lose a lot of money this time. He had consecutively attacked over 20 demon sects, apart from the 10 at the back which he fled in advance. A few days ago, he had collected many mind stones which were the treasures of dozens of sections. After several years of spiritual wave eruptions, it was a high production period, amongst which there were 2 sects that were ranked in the 19 spiritual houses. The income this time was 10 times that of the 30 over Taoist sects that he wiped out before he left the Cloud World. It was enough to support the Book of Ian for a period of time. The Universe Light Hall wasn't complete, but along with his Book of Ian, it would increase the effect of time acceleration. As a matter of fact, even he would need more than 10 years to fully digest the demonic arts he had obtained to increase the number of Dao Seed Stars and the 10 ultimate Imperial Dao extermination swords. As for the Book of Ian, there was no need to keep it secret. Even if people knew, there would be very few who would dare to snatch it from him. Since he returned to the Cloud World, he hadn't truly used the power of this god artifact. It wasn't that he wasn't willing, but that he couldn't, without enough spiritual energy to support it. The spirit stones he had were more than willing to double the time in exchange for a true increase in his strength. In the past, he would use as much as he could get his hands on, leaving only a small portion in the book to save his life in times of danger. He could feel that Kong Yao was really exhausted. Zhongsho pitied her and didn't torture her anymore. He was prepared to let her rest peacefully. On the contrary, it was Yao herself who provoked him. The 2 of them went at it for a full half of the night before Kong Yao was exhausted. She laid on Zhongsho's tail and fell asleep. Hugging Kong Yao's body, Zhongsho caressed her silk-like hair. His heart felt pained. Only now did he realize that this unparalleled war god, who had never been defeated on the battlefield, was also feeling quite a bit of pressure in his heart. Just now, when she sought pleasure from him, it was not only to vent, but also to seek comfort in her heart from him. It has been tough on Yao, this time. Using 2 million troops to suppress the 5 states in the south wasn't an easy matter. It wasn't something that the Shang army could easily occupy if they backed out of this region. The interests of the various powers were intertwined with one another. It was also because of his 5 imperial edicts that those noble families resisted with all their might. On one hand, Kong Yao had to defend against the Taishan. On the other hand, she had to suppress the rebels. During that period of time, Zhongsho was fighting the demon sect and couldn't help. The situation was indeed really dangerous. If they were not careful, they would be in danger of being overthrown. Luckily, at this moment, the troops that Deqian had recruited a few months ago had formed up and could take on huge responsibilities. It caused the military strength of the 5 states to not be stretched too thin. This was also the reason why Kong Yao was willing to put down everything and focus on cultivating in the Universe Light Hall. The situation had stabilized. Deqian had stationed 1,000,000 troops in front of Hundred Victory Pass and also built a temporary pass city. Sherulin also led the navy to attack the mouth of the Yangtze River several times. A portion of the Cloud ships successfully entered this water system. As a result, the Taishang Navy wasn't the only one that was strong. The battle entered a stalemate, and no one could think about breaking through in a short time. What they were competing on now was the strength of both sides. It didn't matter whether or not Kong Yao and the others were there or not. On the morning of the second day, Zhongsho brought Kong Yao along and slowly entered the city under the protection of 30,000 iron cavalry. The carriage pulled by 49 dragon horses was too huge and naturally wasn't suitable. They could only change to a carriage and enter Gantian Mountain City. 12 bells rang out throughout the 100 miles around Gantian Mountain. The two sides of the streets were filled with Gantian Mountain people, their expressions solemn and respectful. Zhongsho was slightly shocked. He thought that after he entered the city would be filled with cheers. However, at this moment, the city was so silent that it could be broken, until a portion of the people knelt down at the side of the road. Long live the Saint King! The voices of tens of millions of people gathered like one, shaking the clouds. Only then did it become slightly messy. The heavens blessed Deqian, which is why there is a Saint Lord. Our Deqian country is prosperous, and the people are prosperous. The rule of the 3 ancient emperors is all because of the Saint King. Let's hope that the king is invincible. Zhongsho sat within the carriage, the corner of his lips twitching slightly. In comparison, when he entered the city last time, some people said that he was useless in certain areas, which made him feel more at ease. At this moment, everyone was respectful and worshipful. Everyone was saying the same thing, which made him feel a little weird. When Kong Yao heard that, she was delighted, her brows filled with a gratified smile. Her life goal was to help a wise ruler, to command 10,000 rulers, to fight on the battlefield and leave her name in history, so that her father's prediction wouldn't be wrong. Although she had switched to Deqian, for some reason she had become Zhongsho's concubine. However, this wish had never changed. At this moment, for her husband to be recognized by the people, she was even happier than others praising her. However, at this moment, she felt that something was amiss. She looked over curiously and said, "Husband, you are able to gain the respect of your subjects because of your virtue as a ruler. You are recognized by the people. However, you don't seem to like it." Zhongsho shook his head slightly, not knowing how to explain. It isn't a good thing to respect someone too much. If there is only one person out of tens of millions of people, it will only lead to disaster. He didn't dare to say that in that moment. When he was cheered on by the people, he actually felt a little intoxicated. He also knew that at this moment, his reputation in Gantian Mountain had reached the peak. No matter what he wanted to do, these people would listen to him, and not many people would stand out to resist. Luckily, he didn't crave power. Only because of special reasons did he inherit Deqian and become the ruler of a country. What he chased in his heart was still the peak of the sword path. This was why a moment later, he came back to his senses. However, he also felt that the entire Deqian and himself were in an extremely dangerous situation. Anything he said could affect the direction of the Deqian country. The problem was that he himself wasn't sure which things were beneficial to Deqian and which policies were harmful to Deqian. Sighing slightly, Zhongsho made a decision in his heart. From now on, he couldn't say anything about administrative matters in case it caused a huge disaster. Maybe he should really follow Zhang Huai's words and move the capital. The people of Gantian Mountain City all respected him. Instead, it was the Central Cloud Continent and the 5 states of Jiangnan that were rebelling that made him wake up a little. Only one person out of tens of millions of people. Kong Yao muttered, following which she didn't understand. "I don't understand. What's wrong with that?" Like the Taishang Emperor, he was held back by those aristocratic families and officials. 53 states, the strength of a country, but he could only use 1/10 of it. He actually couldn't do anything to Deqian. "Before my dynasty, There were only 7 barbarian states with a small population. Her husband's personality was really weird. Zhongsho broke into a laugh. As expected, even if he said all this, Kong Yao wouldn't understand and wouldn't know the dangers within. He didn't have any intentions to continue explaining and kept silent. The ceremony this time was much grander than the last. The carriage circled around the city before returning to Gantian Mountain. At this moment, the giant square below the mountain was filled with people. Roughly looking, there were hundreds of thousands of people. Those who had the right to stand here were either officials with status or rich people from all over Daqin. Based on the etiquette, Zhongsho walked up to the high platform at the back of the square under the guidance of the Ministry of Rights official. Next, he just needed to accept the bows of the people and give out the rewards for this battle, and it would be over. However, the moment Zhongsho sat down on the throne, Rinbo and the others, as well as the other officials, all bowed to Li Mu. Even the Ministry of Rights official who was in charge of the entire ceremony was the same. We are risking our lives to ask for your majesty to change the system and become emperor. A series of 3 voices spread out. It caused the hundreds of thousands of people nearby to all quiet down. After a short while, someone finally reacted and bowed as well. Our Daqin has spread across the world. Your majesty, please change the system and become emperor. Zhongsho was stunned, looking at the black mass of people. This didn't match the etiquette. Based on the procedures set up by the Ministry of Rights, there shouldn't be such a thing. Then, he came back to his senses. This was probably planned long ago, a sudden attack. Hundreds of thousands of people were kneeling. At this moment, he had no way to reject. He wanted to scold them, but when the words reached his mouth, he swallowed them back. At this moment, there was no point in saying all this. It would only make the ruler and his officials feel awkward. He looked at Xinyuan Irin, who was sitting beside him, only to see that she was also at a loss. Zhongsho smiled bitterly. His wife was addicted to pill refining, so why would she bother about all this? She didn't even know that she was being sold. I allow it. Like what the officials want, the country title won't change. It will be changed to Yuan Shenwu. Chapter 11:10. I allow it. Like what the officials want, the country title won't change. It will be changed to Yuan Shenwu. From now on, people could call him Shenwu Emperor. Shenwu? Rinbo muttered softly, pondering over each word. Shenwu, those who are smart and know. Those who don't kill are the ones. It meant to use good luck and misfortune to conquer all things, ruling the world and not killing. However, within it, there was also killing intent. It seems like in the following days, Daqin couldn't avoid war. At this moment, among the officials, all the people with the surname Zhong had tears in their eyes as they looked at the teen on the throne. 20 years ago, even the most ambitious of them all followed Zhong Weiran. They didn't expect that Gantian Mountain, which was built up from the wilderness, would one day rule the world and become the overlord of the cloud world. They also didn't expect that the prince, who was looked down on by the people due to his dual meridian body, would be the future saint ruler. Shenwu, tens of miles away, the middle-aged man, known as Mr. Yangming, was also deep in thought. Using good luck and misfortune to conquer all things, which is why the smart and knowledgeable Shenwu Emperor used this path to conquer the world and didn't use torture to make people submit. Just from this era title, one could see that the path this ruler took was to be saint on the inside and overlord on the outside. Removing physical torture, clearing out decrees, this was treating the people with benevolence. However, the word Shenwu also signaled that the Daqin would still focus on military matters and would conquer the world. Kong Rue raised his head and looked into the sky, only to see that giant white dragon rising into the air. Its bright silver scale armor was slowly dyed with a purple-gold color. There was still no impurities, so pure that one didn't dare to look directly at it. At this moment, Zhongsho was viciously staring at Rinbo. Today, he was close to abdicating. Such a thing, without the approval of the Grand Secretary, couldn't happen. The latter didn't care. His expression was really calm. This wasn't the first time he had seen such an expression on Zhongsho's face. At this moment, his term was up. If he didn't leave the political scene, he would have to move to the meeting hall and wait for the next term. The anger of the monarch was nothing to him. If he was really angry, then it was not impossible for him to retire. At this point in his life, he had no regrets. Besides, he was the mastermind today. However, the generals and civil servants all agreed with it. And the people who first suggested to the cabinet ministers were Zhongsho's two fathers-in-law. If the monarch really had a problem with it, he shouldn't have come looking for him. Zhongsho, on the other hand, was helpless and felt a slight headache. He didn't want to become an emperor because he didn't want to deepen his connection with the aura of the King Tao and obstruct his path of seeking the Tao. In the instant that he agreed to become the emperor, there was an immeasurable amount of power of heaven and earth. They came from all directions. Even the Avicii throne was unable to withstand the pressure. Now, he could only wait and see the effects of the sword embryo that Shun Yuexian had refined for him. Although the Universe Light Hall was controlled by Tsang Shengdao, Sword Sect, and Buddhist faction, it was located near Gantian Mountain. It was the spiritual house of Kongqi sect. It wasn't that this place was safe or that the spiritual energy was strong, but that only this place could make the three factions feel at ease. Each of the three factions had a Saint Realm expert guarding and also had the duty to take care of the safety of Gantian Mountain City. Of the 500 spots that entered each year, the three factions split 60%, and the Diqian took 30%. The required Mind Stones and even the guards were provided by the three factions. However, after all, the rights to the Universe Light Hall belonged to Zhongsho. In these short few years, it had provided many strong cultivators for the Diqian. Zhongsho was the ruler and also the owner of this god artifact. If he wanted to use it, naturally he could occupy the inner hall. Only Kong Yao, Ren Tianxing, and a few others were here. Xianyuan Irin and Shi Ruolin also came. Since he was going to use time acceleration on a large scale, Zhongsho decided to gather his right-hand men, family, and subordinates. Anyways, most of these people were at Spirit Realm and wouldn't spend too many Mind Stones. Originally, they didn't care much. It wasn't that they hadn't come here before and treated it as normal cultivation. It wasn't until Zhongsho took out the book of Ian Extreme Life that their expressions started to turn solemn. He could clearly sense the power of time contained within the book. Is this the legendary book of Ian? When Ren Tianxing asked that, he felt that he was a little dumb. Wasn't the cover of this book exactly the feeling of the book of Ian Extreme Life? Instantly, he had a feeling of enlightenment. No wonder Zhongsho's cultivation could soar so quickly like he was flying. However, his foundations were really thick and really stable. Kong Yao frowned. How can husbands show such an important item to others? Her words stopped. At this moment, Zhongsho really wasn't afraid of people scheming against him. With Gantian Mountain as a shield and also the protection of the three factions. Only if one lost their mind would they think of snatching this book from Zhongsho's hands. Not mentioning that the sky-burning Liu family. At this moment, she felt that it wasn't appropriate. The moment she said those words, it was the same as offending everyone here. Kong Yao's face flushed red as she looked awkwardly at everyone. She wanted to apologize, but she couldn't open her mouth. Imperial concubine, you don't have to do that. Zhang Huai knew what was going on and smiled as he shook his head. Imperial concubine is protecting his majesty. How would we dare to blame you? Just now, I nearly couldn't help but want to persuade you. How could they not be shocked? One must know that not long ago, several worlds outside of the Cloud World caused a huge commotion because of the battle for the Book of Universe. It was said that dozens of Saint Realm experts joined in and numerous cultivators died. Xianyuan Irin looked at the ball of blue light. In other words, with this book along with the Universe Light Hall, it can increase speed? Then, she revealed a regretful expression. What a waste! How good would it be if we could use it to refine pills? Many of the medicinal pills that she had created would take months or even years before the results would come out. Most of the time, she was impatient from waiting. Zhongsho didn't bother. just guiding the Book of Ian to make up for the broken laws within the Universe Light Hall. The Universe Light Hall and the Book of Ian Extreme Life couldn't be stacked. If not, he wouldn't have tossed this broken god artifact back to the Cloud World for the three factions to share. However, it couldn't be stacked. However, he could use the Book of Ian to make up for the time laws in the Universe Light Hall. With the same amount of Mind Stones, he could obtain more acceleration effects. A blood intent appeared in Zhongsho's eyes as he looked at the flow of time. He filled up those broken law lines one by one. 45 minutes later, Zhongsho stopped and frowned. 32 times should be the limit. The efficiency was much lower than the Book of Ian. At this moment, if he used the same amount of Mind Stones to activate the Book of Ian, he could achieve 100 times. The people around were all shocked. 32 times. In other words, a month here was close to 3 years outside. Chapter 11:11. The people around were all shocked. 32 times. In other words, a month here was close to 3 years outside. Zhongsho shook his head. If he purely used the Book of Ian, he would save a lot of Mind Stones. However, the Universe Light Hall had benefits that the Book of Ian didn't. It had a wide range and could provide enough spiritual energy. It wasn't like the Book of Ian, where after time was accelerated, the time in the deep world wouldn't change and the spiritual energy would become thinner. Although the Book of Ian was a god treasure, it was still a Taoist scripture. The Universe Light Hall was an artifact made by the Instant Space Dragon race to allow juniors to comprehend the Space Tao. The functions were different, and the two couldn't be compared at all. 1 day in the Universe Light Hall was equal to 32 days. With the Mind Stones that Zhongsho collected from the various Demon Path sects, it was enough to maintain the acceleration for 4 months. Everyone knew that time was precious. Even if they wasted just a moment, they would waste a lot of Mind Stones. After that day, they all found a corner in the hall and faced the wall to bitterly cultivate. Apart from accumulating true chi and soul energy to seek for a qualitative change, they also needed to comprehend the instant space ability recorded in the Universe Light Hall. Space and time laws were recognized as the most mysterious out of the various Daos and one of the hardest to control. At this moment, even if they could only comprehend one ability, it would be extremely useful. Zhongsho's daily life also temporarily returned to normal. Every day, he would continue to study those Demon Path books to comprehend and deduce, trying to absorb the essence within to replenish himself. Then, every 9 days, Zhongsho would temporarily toss these books aside and answer the questions of the people in the hall. Occasionally, when he was interested, his mouth would flow out like a river, and he would talk about the heaven and earth laws that he comprehended. In name, he was preaching the Tao, but in truth, he was using his mouth to organize what he learned. What he learned was too messy, and it was hard for him to form a system. Now that he had time, he could use the chance to organize it. The people in the hall were all really curious. They felt that Zhongsho's knowledge was really vast. It was like there was nothing he couldn't cover. Zhongsho seemed to be able to answer any questions in cultivation. They also paid more and more attention to Zhongsho's lectures every 7 days. Even if he had to stop cultivating at the critical moment, he had to listen to Zhongsho's words. Zhongsho's Tao could be said to be all-encompassing. Moreover, it was from a strategically advantageous position and was not limited to one corner. Xiao Chun analyzed the connections between the various great Tao laws in detail. The classics in the book came to mind easily. Many of the principles mentioned were unheard of. It might not be all beneficial to them, but it could broaden their horizons. Although he couldn't use it now, it would definitely come in handy in the future when his cultivation reached a higher level. Sometimes, as he listened, he would feel enlightened, and some of the questions he had regarding cultivation would be resolved. In fact, there were many problems that he hadn't realized yet. In the blink of an eye, another month had passed. Although Zhongsho was in the Universal Light Hall, because of his own family's secret guards, Zhongsho was unable to move. He still knew the situation in the outside world like the back of his hand. At this moment, the 5 states in the south had just calmed down. The rebellions in Donglin and South Wind Cloud Continent had just been suppressed. Although the situation was stable, there was a chance that it might worsen. This was why he, Kong Yao, and the others couldn't fully focus on cultivation. They didn't dare to relax about the changes in the outside world. Luckily, along with him becoming the emperor, the situation in Deqian was getting better and better. Maybe after the Taoist and Confucian factions lost the support of the demon path, they were really prepared to give up. The cultivation world slowly stabilized. However, what Zhongshu cared about the most was still Yin Yu and Zhongshuan in the imperial city. He still hadn't found the location of the Qin emperor tomb. The only way now was to monitor the movements of the two of them to react at any moment. The two of them didn't do anything recently. However, around the imperial city, there were still children who went missing. Most of them were born in the afternoon. That was when the yang energy of heaven and earth was at its strongest. Zhongshu thought that the Taoist and Confucian factions would notice that something was up and try to stop it. However, these two sects remained strangely silent. Zhongshu didn't know what to do. It was okay if it was the Taoist faction. However, why didn't any of the Confucian faction disciples come out? There were many hypocrites in the Confucian faction. However, to be able to become a respected Confucian, at least in terms of character, there weren't many flaws. He didn't understand. However, Zhongshu didn't care too much. He wasn't a saint. Although he was furious, he knew that if he interfered now, not only would he not be able to make Yin and Zhongshuan restrain themselves, but it would also cause another round of war. The six factions would fight for supremacy. He had no chance of winning, and the threat of the night demons in the outer region was getting closer. Once the war dragged on, the lives of soldiers would be sacrificed for nothing, and the people would be wiped out. If he was in a white body, he would naturally take revenge. If he was annoyed by Zhongshuan, he would kill him with one sword. However, Zhongshu was, after all, the emperor of a country. Even if he pitted those kids, he had to care more about the safety of his people. Actually, what he paid the most attention to was still Jin Buhui, who was locked up in the jail of the rights department of the imperial capital. The news that spread from the Kinzo sect didn't make him optimistic. They tried a few times and returned in failure, which means that we can't save this person. Zhong Shaoxin's heart was cold, and he was helpless. Jin Buhui, you idiot. You were smart in the past, but now you are such a fool. A true dumb pig. He cursed out. However, Samuraim's eyes were filled with cold, killing intent. Apart from Lei Dong, that fatty was one of the few people in this world whom he considered to be a friend. No matter what intentions the Taishang had and what he was going to do with Jin Buhui, he would make Yin regret sooner or later. He only hoped that Zhongshuan was smart and didn't touch his bottom line. Half a month later, Shun Yuexian finally arrived in the cloud world. At the same time, he brought that sword embryo. It was still in a gaseous state. Compared to the original Xiantian purple Qinxian metal energy, not only was the Xiantian intent thicker, but the aura was also sharper. Apart from that, it was also much thicker. Zhongshu used his spiritual sense to grab it in his hand. The sword embryo in front of him was in the shape of a sword pellet. He needed to inject his spiritual sense, and before it could unfurl and turn into a sword shape. There was already a huge artifact formation within. Most of it was empty, and he needed to use his spiritual sense to inscribe it. However, the part that had already taken shape was already a pleasant surprise. He instinctively felt the use of the item in his hand. It wouldn't be much weaker than the Avicii throne. However, this sword was slightly different from what he had expected. It didn't become weaker, but stronger, far exceeding his expectations. Shin Yuexian said that he wanted to give him a surprise, and he really didn't disappoint him. Spiritual sense spread out and flowed through the entire sword body to explore the mechanisms within. Then, Zhongshu was startled and looked towards Shun Yuexian in shock. Just now, his spiritual sense sensed something within the sword body. Apart from that, there were a few types of Xiantian energy that were totally different from the Xiantian purple Qinxian metal energy. It's the Thousand-Eye Red-Eye Stone. Shen Yuexian was originally sizing up the Universe Light Hall and was slightly surprised. At this moment, Zhongshu looked over and smiled. This is the surprise that I was talking about. This item is between a void stone and is the crystal of 1,000 a monster god beast from 1,000 world away. This stone was taken out from the body of 13,000-year-old thousand eye monster and is most suitable to be the core of the sword. This item is useless to me, so why not give it to your majesty? It might be of some help. When Zhongsho heard this, he broke out into a laugh. The Thousand Eye Red Eye Stone was recorded in Tsang Shengdao's book collection. The Thousand Eye Monster was actually a multi-eyed spider that had 1,000 eyes. It could purify and refine metal energy, spitting it out from its eyes to injure the enemy. Legend had it that a 10,000-year-old Thousand Eye Red Eye Stone could not only purify and refine various sword artifacts, but could also split a person's spiritual sense from 1 to 1,000. Apart from that, if this item was used to make pills, it could greatly increase the quality of one's true chi and soul power. It was a treasure that one could only dream of. Splitting his spiritual sense could allow him to freely control the 3,000 stars, as well as the 10 extreme Imperial Dao Destruction Sword formation. When this item merged into the One Origin Sword, it could also purify the King Path energy that gathered over. It definitely wasn't like what Xinyue Xian said, that it might be of some help. However, he still had questions that he didn't solve. This still couldn't explain the additional Xiantian energy of earth, wood, and fire. Although it was weak, it caused the quality of the sword to be different. I heard that any ruler of a country can't leave the word country. Country is the land, symbolizing the land of the 5 directions. Country refers to the grain of the 5 grains. Mighty Qian thrives on fire. Since it is the King Path sword that your majesty needs, then we have to consider it. Xinyue Xian said expressionlessly, like he didn't care about the precious materials that he had thrown in. Actually, I don't have much heaven-grade Xiantian energy, I only added a little. Zhongsho didn't say any words of thanks, only nodding his head slightly. He remembered this matter in his heart. Although Xinyue Xian said it casually, the materials that this person had invested in were definitely top-grade treasures that were hard to find. Looking at the sword embryo that had shrunk back into a ball, Zhongsho felt more and more delighted. Sharp, light, heavy, this was the most ideal sword artifact. As long as the spirit pattern god art that he carved wasn't too bad, the future of this sword wouldn't be any weaker than the god-refined sword. All right, suddenly thinking about something, Zhongsho slapped his forehead and took out little gold from his sleeves. He thought back to that wing-shaped black iron. A month and a half in the outside world was 4 years in the Universe Light Hall. I wonder if Xiao Jin has swallowed that piece of black iron? He saw that this little fellow was a little dispirited as it spat out something. Then its entire body shrunk into a ball. Zhongsho was stunned, only to see that that thing was still in the shape of a wing and wasn't damaged at all. His spiritual sense was still unable to reach in. In this world, there is actually something that could escape from Little Gold's body. To be continued. Chapter 11:12. Zhongsho held the item in his hand and frowned. He couldn't melt this item. Was it because Little Gold was too weak, or was the grade of this metal too high? Unable to think of a reason, Zhongsho looked at him in anticipation. Mr. Shun, do you recognize this item? Xinyue Xian was also curious as he took the item. He looked at it for half a day and couldn't understand anything, so he could only return it. Forgive me for not recognizing it, but this item is weird and can block spiritual sense. However, looking at the material, it is probably above Xiantian purple Qinxian metal energy. My Mai's family doesn't have any records of it. However, Xinyue Xian paused for a moment, then said with uncertainty, this item should be a finished artifact, and it's something that was born from nature. It is definitely a huge treasure. As for the rest, I don't know. In my eyes, your majesty can carry this item with you. In the future, you might have a chance to solve the mystery of this item. Zhongsho was stunned. Xinyue Xuan's words were the same as not saying anything. To be able to not be swallowed by Little Gold and be unharmed under the god-refined sword. Just thinking about it, one knew that this item wasn't ordinary. However, since Shen Yuexian said that, he totally dispelled the idea of letting Shen Yuexian craft this item into an artifact. Thinking about it for a moment, Zhong Shou sighed and casually tossed the item into a corner of his Lingjie ring. No matter how special the material was or how mysterious it was, if he couldn't use it, then it was no different from trash. It made him look forward to it for so long and thought that it was an amazing treasure. Tossing this matter aside, Zhong Shou's gaze started to turn serious. Do you have any ideas about the Qin Emperor tomb? Shen Yuexian nodded his head solemnly. I've been gathering the Mahist family sect members. There were a total of 10 blacksmiths who participated in the construction of the tomb. They all passed it down to their disciples. I only obtained a portion of the orthodoxy. He needed to gather all these people together to deduce the complete structure of the mechanism. At that time, with the blueprint in Your Majesty's hands, Your Majesty will definitely be able to enter and exit safely. His eyes were filled with cold, mocking intent. As for that Zhongshuan, if I'm not wrong, these people must be waiting for the 9th day of the 9th month, when the sun is at its peak. September 9th, which is Chongyang. Zhong Shou calculated carefully and then laughed. In other words, there are still 2 months left? That was indeed possible. The 9th day of the 9th month was the peak of Yang in the world. At that time, all the evil forces, dead things, and ghosts in the world would be suppressed to the extreme. It was also the best time to enter the Qin Emperor tomb. Now that everything was ready, all that was left was the location. However, since there were still 2 months, he didn't believe that he couldn't find it. Zhong Shou felt relieved and relaxed. He smiled and asked, Mister, are you willing to stay here and cultivate for a while? This person should be a god realm. Although the consumption of mind stones would increase, he was willing to do so. Opposite him, Shen Yuexian smiled apologetically. Thank you, Your Majesty, for your kindness. However, I have other matters to attend to and can only thank you for your good intentions. Zhong Shaoxin knew that this person most probably wanted to participate in the Confucian discussion. At this moment in Gantian Mountain City, the Confucian discussion still hadn't stopped. The officials didn't bother and didn't invest money. However, there were more and more scholars gathering in Gantian Mountain City. Every day, they would debate in the various tea houses of the various colleges. It was similar to the ancient times when hundreds of schools of thought were fighting. Although cultivating in the Universe Light Hall could speed up time. However, compared to the rise and fall of the Mahist orthodoxy, it wasn't worth mentioning. Zhong Shou didn't ask him to stay and allowed Shen Yuexian to leave. At the same time, Zhang Huai also left. As Zhong Shou's most capable subject, he had to deal with a lot of matters every day. Not long later, he would replace Rimbo as the Grand Secretary. Being able to take out 1.5 months was already his limit. How would he have so much free time to cultivate? In the next few days, Hu Zhongyuan and the others all left the Universe Light Hall. These few people weren't talented enough. In the Universe Light Hall, they couldn't comprehend the instant space ability anymore. When Zhong Shou spoke about the Tao, they also found it harder and harder to understand. What they accumulated over these years had been used up. There was no reason for them to continue to stay here and waste their remaining lifespan. In these 4 years, they had gained a lot. It probably wouldn't take long for them to step into the celestial realm. However, to improve further, they would need at least 100 years. At this moment, there were only a few people left in the hall. Rin Tianxing, Zhong Yuan were all really talented and would only complain that they didn't have enough time. Kong Yao, in Zhong Shou's last life, was someone who could go up against the God Emperor. As for Shi Rulin, she had the most elite bloodline in the Snow Lion tribe. Only Xianyuan Iren's talent was a little weaker. However, she placed a pill furnace in the hall and focused on refining pills. As for Chu Shui, this brat had her 5 god beasts to help her comprehend the Tao. Every day, the Chill Gold Tiger, Red Fire Gold Phoenix, and the other god beasts would look at those murals and think hard. When Zhong Shou spoke, they were really focused and didn't dare to miss out on a single word. Chu Shui, on the other hand, had nothing to do all day, which made others envious. In the 3rd month, Zhongsho finally finished reading the last Demon Path book that he had collected. At this moment, in his soul remembrance, the originally incomplete Tao character finally had a complete embryonic form. There were a total of 1,742 books, a total of 157 Taos. At this moment, the number of stars in Zhongsho's soul ocean had increased to 187. The number of 10 extreme Imperial Tao Destruction Dragon 2 swords was also explosively increasing to 190. For the first time, it exceeded the number of Star Tao seeds. Among the three main swords, one of them was the Defend word, one was the Punish word, and one was the Borrow word. Although the entire sword formation didn't touch the foundations of heaven and earth, power was unbelievably huge. Zhongsho had tried using it in the outer region World River. Within 1,000,000 feet, the sword energy was thick and dense. Without using the martial arts of the Emperor Tao, dozens of celestial grade spirit beasts were smashed into pieces the moment they entered the range of the sword formation. Especially the last two main swords. One was an artifact formation that copied the Imperial Demon slaying records, while the other directly borrowed the Blood Moon Blade's god pattern. The moment it was crafted, its level was really high. Zhongsho was pretty much unable to control it. This Demon Path technique is really different from what I learned in the past. Does a different perspective lead to a different result? The Taoist faction legacy cultivation method used one's body as a heaven and earth, a universe. When one's cultivation was high, one pretty much didn't need external help. As for the Demon Path technique, it burned everything to form one's foundations. The higher the level, the more one needed to plunder. Naturally, there was a reason why people called it the Demon Path. In the Cloud World, the Kenzo sect and Tsang Shengdao came from the same line as the Taoist faction. The Buddhist faction used the wish power of the people to cultivate. Zhongsho didn't care about this cultivation method. He only cared about the structure of heaven and earth and the explanations of the Grand Tao. Unfortunately, the level of these demon books is too low. There are only 11 grade 10 Saint Spirit level and above martial arts. It is far from enough to merge the strengths of the two factions. 1,000 Demon Path books were just enough for Zhongsho to learn the basics. At this moment, Zhongsho only regretted negotiating with Su Xiao. He agreed too early. At that time, he should have wiped out a few more. However, at that time, the people of the demonic Tao fled at the mere sight of him. Before they left, they took away all of their assets. If he continued, he probably wouldn't gain much. Actually, if he wanted to get higher-level Demon Path techniques, he could only get them from the Heaven Demon Vast Habitat, Yuanshi Demon Sect, and Star Demon Sect. Luckily, I am on the right track. Even without more books, I can perfect it step by step. As long as I continue, using the Book of Ian, at most in 20 to 50 years, I will be able to form my own Tao path and step into the God realm. Zhongsho was delighted. The formation of the Tao path didn't just mean that his cultivation would rise. At that time, his sword techniques would rise to a new level. Who knows, he might even be able to enter the sword intent God realm. Comprehending heaven and earth and being able to see God, it would reach the pinnacle of God. That was a sword technique realm that people couldn't understand. To date, Zhongsho had only seen some signs of it from Yixian. However, the latter was still far from it. Even for end-realm cultivators, not all of them were able to enter this realm. Wei Su used the blade, but his blade intent was only at the peak of the sword intent spirit realm. This was also the peak of the sword path that Zhongsho dreamed of. If he reached this step, then he would have completed half of his goals. Zhongsho was slightly distracted and he was in deep thought. A long while later, he laughed. He finally saw the hope of proving the peak of the sword path, such that he nearly couldn't control himself. It took him much effort to calm himself down. It is useless to increase the number of sword formations as I can't control them. However, if I can merge them into the Thousand-Eye Blood-Eye Stone, then it would be different. If I split my mind, I would be able to control even 1,000 swords like my arms. With my current strength, even if I don't use the Book of Ian and King Path martial arts, even the top God realm experts wouldn't be able to do anything to me. God Realm experts naturally didn't include people like Ao Kuan and Yixien. When the latter was at God Realm, he could directly damage his foundations. Yixian's sword techniques were amazing, and before he went through his tribulation, he could fight against 3 Saint Realm venerables. However, it is still not enough to protect myself in the Qin Emperor tomb. In the tomb, he might not be able to use King Path martial arts, so he had to be careful. The only thing that could quickly raise his strength was the 10 Extreme Imperial Dao Destruction sword formation. The tomb was huge, and he wasn't afraid of not being able to use it. Opening his eyes, Zhongsho looked at the sword pellet in his hand. 1 month, 3 years, he used his mind to nurture it, causing this item to merge perfectly with his soul. As for the original One Origin sword, it had completely dissipated. At this moment, he could merge it into his soul. Without hesitation, Zhongsho formed a seal and pointed. That sword pellet flew into the clouds and charged into his soul ocean. Just at that moment, Zhongsho felt a vast essence energy charge towards his limbs and bones. His true qi condensed and his soul ocean expanded. This is the power of the Thousand-Eye Blood-Eye Stone. Didn't they say that it would only be useful if one ate it? A weird expression flashed across Samuraim's eyes. He knew that he just needed a thought, and he would be able to enter late celestial realm. To be continued. Chapter 11:13. The power of the Thousand-Eye Blood-Eye Stone was extremely huge as it swept his body. It caused the vital energy in Zhongsho's body to boil and all his true qi and soul power to rise. However, Zhongsho forcefully suppressed it such that he didn't step over that boundary. At this moment, he instinctively thought back to Xiuguan's warning that if he progressed too quickly, he might end up like Li Wuke. Not only this top person of the Cloud World, but even Long Ying and Lin Xuan were worried. At this moment, using the Thousand-Eye Blood-Eye Stone, he could easily step in a late celestial realm. However, this also meant that his foundations might be unstable. Then, was there a need for him to do that? Did he have enough confidence to ensure that his foundations wouldn't be affected? To enter the Qin Emperor tomb, each bit of strength is really precious. If I can step in a late celestial realm, my combat strength will close to double. This opportunity is just what I've been looking for. Zhongsho was in deep thought. At this moment, an image of himself appeared in his mind. He revealed everything about himself one by one. Tao True Image, Black and White Dharma, Yin and Yang Energy Ocean. Along with all the abilities, all the martial path and spiritual techniques that he grasped, they were all displayed. In the visualization of his divine telekinesis, streams appeared one after another before finally converging into one place. Was his Tao foundations too weak? Zhongsho looked on silently. A moment later, a smile appeared on his face. Senior Master Xiuguan was right. My Tao foundations are indeed a little unstable. However, it is just a small grade, so it is okay to cross the border. It had some effects, but it wasn't important. He just needed to spend some time, and he could fix it. Opening his eyes, a bright glow flashed in Zhongsho's eyes. He didn't purposely suppress it anymore. A huge energy surged out from his body and spread out in all directions. The vital energy and blood in his body surged, and he easily crossed that boundary. Late celestial realm. His true qi and soul power were being purified. Zhongsho slowly entered a meditative state. Like a dead tree, he sat cross-legged. It was as if he had died. There was no sign of life. His breathing stopped, and all the pores on his body tightened. His soul sense also disappeared without a trace. His entire body was almost completely isolated from the world. It was completely separated into 2 worlds. This was a strange situation. It shocked Xinyuan Irin and Kong Yao. If it wasn't for the fact that Zhongsho's body was still warm, he would have suspected that Zhongsho had already passed away. Just like that, a full year passed. 10 days passed outside of the Universe Light Hall before Zhongsho woke up from his fake death state. This was because there was a message talisman in his hand. It was news from the Imperial capital. Imperial advisor Zhongshuan had already disappeared. He only left a fake body in the capital city. Yuanchan Emperor Yin, you hadn't gotten close to the officials in 3 days. It was said that at this moment he was sick. Apart from that, after using countless cultivators to search, they finally had some idea of where the Qin Emperor tomb was. They have already made a move? It is actually the 99 double yang. At this moment, his skin was covered in a layer of purple energy. Zhongshuo frowned. He retracted his soul power and suppressed the purple energy around his body. Legend has it that the experts in the ancient times all had purple energy covering their bodies. They really didn't lie to me. The purple energy was actually caused by the inner and outer worlds interfering with one another. At this moment, Zhongshuo's inner world was formed. His body was pretty much a complete world. The next step would be to continuously expand and nurture this world. During this period of time, he had isolated himself from the outside to stabilize this inner world. Zhongshuo used his internal vision technique to check his body. He could feel a special energy circulating between his chakra meridians and soul ocean. It actually had both true qi and soul power. Is this the so-called celestial power? Zhongshuo was deep in thought. Based on records, cultivators below celestial realm couldn't grasp more than 30% of spirit and martial arts merger before they stepped into God realm. Then, they wouldn't be able to step into saint realm for the rest of their lives. Only a very rare case could succeed. The reason was that true qi and soul power could merge into celestial power in the inner world. Before saint realm, the stronger and purer the celestial power in one's body, the higher the chances of stepping into saint realm. However, normally speaking, celestial power had to be formed at God realm. As for him, it had appeared an entire realm ahead of time, and it was extremely pure. However, with his 50% spirit and martial arts merger, it wasn't too surprising. When he was at Xiantian, he was able to achieve 20%. After that, every realm he increased, his soul power and true qi merger would increase by 10%. When he reached celestial realm, it was exactly 50%, a full 50% merger rate. Compared to others, he had a huge advantage. Many talented cultivators had only just completed spirit and martial arts as one. At most, they were only at 20%. At this moment, although there was only a bit of celestial power in his body, it was enough to surprise him. I wonder how powerful it is. Zhongshuo used his spiritual sense to grab a top magical treasure in his hand. With a slight squeeze, the object was crushed into a metal pancake in his hand. The artifact formation within only lasted for a moment. Zhongshuo was stunned for a moment before he came back to his senses. The reason why God Realm cultivators could look down on Celestial Realm cultivators was because of celestial power. At this moment, he had it early, which meant that he had a portion of Celestial Realm cultivators' power. However, the reason why he could use his bare hands to crush top magical treasures was because his body was already really strong. Zhongshuo took out the god-refined sword and injected the celestial power into the sword body. At the tip of the sword, a 3-foot-long purple sword energy spat out. It was extremely sharp. If it wasn't for Zhongshuo restraining it, it would have scratched the wall. If I slash out with this sword, the sword's strength would be at least 10 times stronger than before. It is more suitable for Spirit Realm sword intent to use. Unfortunately, there was too little of it. Within a day, he could only use it 3 times. The strength of these 3 swords could even be compared to Yi Xian's Great Ring Shaking Sword. However, after these 3 swords, it would take a full day to recover. Laughing, Zhongshuo was satisfied. With a thought, he sucked the Book of Ian back into his soul ocean. He had already occupied this hall for close to 4 months. If he continued, the people from the Sword faction and Buddhist faction wouldn't say anything on the surface, but they would probably be anxious in their hearts. At this moment, he had used up all his mind stones and was only left with a portion, so he couldn't continue. After walking out of the Universe Light Hall, Zhongshuo looked towards the west. At this moment, it was just 3 days away from the 9th day of the 9th month. Chapter 1114. North of the central cloud continent, a dark abyss beneath the cloud ocean. Zhongsho stepped on the blue fire Xian turtle and flew into the air. Maybe because it was returning to its old land, the turtle was really excited. It cried out to scare the demonized beasts around. Before Zhongsho subdued it, it was one of the overlords of the abyss. Zhongsho was really focused, using his world-burning blood eyes to observe the area 1,000 miles away. For this tomb, the Qin sent out all their experts, mobilizing all their helpers and Dao soldiers. However, they were only in charge of receiving outside. After all, it wasn't the time for the tomb to appear. The spiritual formations within were still perfectly fine. All the mechanisms were still working. If too many people entered, they would only be asking to die. At this moment, the Qin wasn't the only one gathered here. Song Xingdao, Sword Faction, and Buddhist Faction all went all out. Dozens of Saint Realm venerables looked on from afar. The current atmosphere was really tense, like they had returned to before the battle in the southeast. Zhongsho knew that the 6 factions would participate this time to get the various treasures buried with the tomb. However, they wouldn't be able to interfere in the fight for the 12 copper men. Legend has it that this object can only be controlled by someone who possesses the aura of a king. That Zhongshuan thought that he was keeping a secret, but in the end, everyone in the world knew about it. The one who spoke beside Zhongsho was Osamu Hara. He rushed back after hearing the news, following behind Xin Wuxian to return from Tianfeng World to the Cloud World. It is going to be really exciting this time. Who knows how many people will die in the end? His tone was cold and filled with disdain. However, along with the fully recovered Jade puppet, he was really confident. The top puppet of Maha's faction was comparable to Saint Realm venerables. It was also suppressed by the power of heaven and earth and was the lightest. That Zhongshuan can be considered talent. This matter isn't so simple. Zhongsho shook his head and didn't think much of it. He didn't dare to be careless when facing Zhongxian, who had come back from the dead. Song Xingdao and the Kinzo sect Buddhist sects were something he had paid special attention to before following up. From the looks of it, the Confucian, Taoist, and Demon faction had long been aware of Zhongshuan Yinyu's plan. However, it was also possible that Zhongxian was doing this on purpose, deliberately stirring up unrest in the world. As far as he knew, he had to open the door of the Qin Emperor's tomb to wash away the baleful Yin Qi. With the power of the Taishang nation, even if the nation's power weakened, they could still complete the collection within 3 days before the 9th day of the 9th lunar month. To do such a shocking thing so early, it was as if he had deliberately informed them that he was about to scheme something. Who cares? With the 4 of us here, what sort of storm can Zhongxian cause? Osamu Hara sneered, still disdainful. Then, he changed his tone and said, "Speaking of which, Zhongsho, are you willing to accept me as a consecrator?" Zhongsho was stunned and then reacted. Naturally, he was delighted, but his expression didn't reveal anything. Is it because of the Universe Light Hall? The Universe Light Hall would be exposed sooner or later. During these few years, there were already thousands of people cultivating within. This was why when Osamu Hara found his way over, Zhongsho didn't hide anything from him. He even purposely let his consecrators spread the news to tempt this person. Even if he didn't use the Book of Ian to complete it, the Universe Light Hall would have time accelerated by 10 times. Normal cultivators might not be tempted, but people like Osamu Hara, who focused on improving on the cultivation path, would definitely take the bait. He was the same type of person as Osamu Hara, which was why they appreciated each other. Yes and no. Osamu Hara laughed. A bright glow appeared in his eyes. "You are a good person. I like you. In the past, I cultivated both Taoist and Demon factions. I have always been alone, no sect or faction. It was okay in the past, but now I feel that I don't have enough resources." Zhongsho was enlightened and then broke into a laugh. "That's exactly what I wanted. In the future, if you need anything, as long as I Qian have it, you can take it." In the last life, after the 160 years of the spiritual wave, Osamu Hara disappeared. However, before he disappeared, he was already a genuine saint stage expert. It only took him 180 years to reach a realm that other cultivators would need 10,000 years to reach. His talent was only a little weaker than Shuriwe, Gong Yuan, and a few others. He was someone who could be compared to them. Even if one didn't talk about his future achievements, just that puppet alone was comparable to a Saint Realm expert. To be able to recruit this person under him. In just 100 years, the future Gantia Mountain would have one more top combat power, so why not? Moreover, his master was also an extraordinary person. Although he wasn't Saint Realm, he was once famous like Long Ying. He could also rope him in through Osamu Hara. Osamu Hara didn't say anything, only acknowledging with a soft "in" to express his gratitude. Every step he took in the future would require a lot of resources. However, listening to Zhongsho's words, he could go all out for him. Originally, he wanted to search for those things himself, but with the entire Diqian celestial dynasty as a shield, he could at least save dozens of years. Are those few people the God Emperor candidates of the Cloud World? What strong auras! They aren't weaker than Brother Yuan. Shen Yuexian was also at the side. He didn't have Zhongsho's world-burning bloodline. Instead, he took out an immortal treasure called the 1,000-Mile Mirror, which had 2 lenses embedded in it, and looked at it. It could also see thousands of miles away, not much weaker than Zhongsho's world-burning blood-eye ability. At this moment, shock appeared in his eyes. However, there is still good news. It seems like the Qin Emperor Tomb suppression on cultivators is close to double that of the Cloud World. Saint Realm Venerables love their reputation. During the Battle of the 6 Factions, their appearance in the Cloud World was an exception, directly causing a few Saint Realm Venerables to fall under Zhongsho's sword. At this moment, even if the Qin Emperor Tomb appeared, they might not appear and personally participate. With the identity and position of these people, no matter what items appeared in the tomb, these people would get their share. If they personally took the risk, they might gain more, but it also meant that they had to take a huge risk. Zhongsho wasn't the only one in the Cloud World who could kill Saint Realm Venerables. The more the Qin Emperor Tomb suppressed cultivators, the lower the chances of these Saint Realm Venerables appearing. Originally, the 4 people Diqian prepared to enter the tomb, Zhongsho, Chu Shui, Osamu Hara, and Shen Yuexian all had the ability to fight against Saint Realm Venerables. At that time, no matter what the situation was, they would be able to handle it. However, the strength of the few God Emperor candidates surprised Shen Yuexian. The subordinates they brought were all extraordinary. This was the first time he felt that the situation might not be as he had imagined. In the Cloud World, there were many experts. Many of them were people he had never heard of before. As long as 5 or 6 of them worked together, they would be able to go up against them. Close to half of them working together would force the 4 of them to avoid them. There were also many who were still hidden in the darkness and weren't noticed by them. No worries. Although these people belonged to the Taishang, they might not be willing to help Zhongshuan. Zhongsho was really calm as he looked at them one by one. Many familiar and unfamiliar faces flashed across his eyes. He had heard of many names before. Some were foreign, and he had never heard of them before. However, they were really strong. However, Shuriwe wasn't among them. Did he have a way to hide himself to avoid his world-burning blood eyes? Or did he not come at all this time? Zhongsho was deep in thought. Inyu allowed Zhongshuan to collect the essence blood of children, and only Shuriwe tried to stop him. 2 months ago, there was a huge battle outside of the Imperial City that spread out hundreds of miles. Many people guessed that Shuriwe wanted to kill Zhongshuan. In the end, this storm ended with Shuriwe being moved out of the Imperial City. Then, when the Qin Emperor Tomb opened, what would that person do? The 12 copper men in the tomb were the only chance for the Taishang to rise up. However, if he allowed Inyu to succeed, it would bring calamity to the Shur family who held 7 million troops in the south. Thinking about that, Zhongsho shook his head. No matter what Shuriwe did, it had nothing to do with him. However, there are many experts this time, so we need to be careful, especially Brother Yuan. Osamu Hara's lips curled up, and he retracted his arrogance. Actually, if he was really arrogant and didn't know how to restrain himself, he wouldn't have been able to live till today. Each time he faced an opponent, he would go all out. Like the first time he clashed with Zhong Shou, even if he didn't know Zhong Shou's bottom line, he still went all out. Shen Yuexian was still holding onto the 1,000-mile mirror. At this moment, he was pumped up. It has begun. Zhong Shou's blood eyes looked towards the Qin Emperor tomb. The East Kunlun giant mountain in the past had partially sunk into the ground, and one couldn't see the majestic aura of the past. The Qin Emperor tomb didn't have a tombstone. The so-called tomb gate was a giant stone that was 100,000 feet wide. At this moment, a black shadow appeared on it. Hundreds of thousands of blood droplets splattered in all directions. They were evenly distributed on the giant stone. Along with the blood flowing, they formed a giant spiritual formation. The yang energy of heaven and earth instantly exploded out. Using the formation to draw in more yang energy, the yin energy that lingered on the green stone slab was slowly dispelled. Outside the tomb, the surrounding 1,000 miles seemed to be calm on the surface, as if everything was normal. At this moment, many people were using all sorts of methods to look at the tomb. Zhong Shou was also focused, judging the time when the vengeful yin energy would be removed. Until noon? He probably needs to use the yang energy at noon to succeed in one go. He looked towards the man in the black cape, who was tightly wrapped up. This person didn't seem to be Zhongshuan. Then, where was the current Zhongshuan Yinyu? What he feared the most was this spell master, who had many weird and evil techniques. Zhong Shou didn't fear anything, as he had a body that no evil could enter. However, if he attacked Chu Shui, then it would be problematic. He originally thought that the enemy was in the light while he was in the dark. However, Zhongshuan was smarter. He didn't show himself and was still hiding in the dark. That was a little problematic. Now, he could only hope that the few evil warding artifacts that Kong Rue provided before he came would be useful. Just as he was thinking about that, Zhong Shou heard a really nice girl's laughter from not far away. "Not seeing you for a few months, Your Majesty. How have you been?" The voice was really familiar. When Zhong Shou turned around, he saw Su Xiaoxiao standing 10,000 feet away. Chapter 11:15. At this moment, Su Xiaoxiao was dressed in a white dress. One couldn't see the hot and sexy side of her at all. She didn't put on any makeup and looked pure and cute. She didn't look seductive at all. Standing there, she was like a pure little white flower, causing one's heart to thump. She also looked like a celestial that had descended to the mortal world. Zhong Shouxin thought about it and knew that it was because of the Yuan Demon 7 emotion technique that this woman was able to find this place. His brow rose up and his eyes were filled with disbelief. "You actually didn't die? I thought that Wushang Yuan Demon would treat you as fertilizer for his plants. How rare." Su Xiaoxiao gritted her teeth. Thinking about it, if it wasn't for the wings, that might have been possible. Not bothering about Zhong Shou's teasing, Su Xiaoxiao directly jumped onto the turtle shell. Chu Shui felt annoyed and pulled out the blood moon blade. A red shadow flashed across the air without a trace. Su Xiaoxiao exclaimed and casually tossed out a red veil. The mist dissipated and covered her body. When the blood moon blade shadow slashed across, the veil was sliced into two. However, Su Xiaoxiao was still standing there perfectly fine. Chu Shui's brow rose up. The knife light instantly turned back, but just as it was about to strike out when she was about to slash down, she noticed that she couldn't slash down no matter what. She was kind, and if she didn't hate Su Xiaoxiao, she wouldn't have slashed out. At this moment, she felt embarrassed. Looking at Su Xiaoxiao's pitiful and terrified expression, she felt guilty. This woman didn't actually do anything? Was she a little too much? Controlling the 7 emotions, is that the 9 secret Yuan Demon 7 emotion technique? Interesting. Osamu Hara laughed coldly and was really interested. "Brother Zhong, do you want me to help you kill her?" Zhong Shou face-bombed and sighed. He swore that in his life, he rarely showed mercy to his enemies. However, he really couldn't kill this demon girl. Osamu Hara was slightly surprised. With Zhong Shou's ruthlessness, why would he hesitate at this moment? Thinking about it, he laughed out loud. Is it the seven emotions attracting energy? Has Brother Zong's heart been moved? As he spoke, he retracted his spiritual sense. He cultivated both fiendish and demonic paths and knew a thing or two about the Yuan demon seven emotions technique. She knew that under the influence of love, Zhongsho really couldn't do anything to Su Xiaoxiao. But comparatively speaking, Su Xiaoxiao posed no threat to them. Zhongsho's face was ashen, and he looked even worse. However, these days of studying the demonic path's ancient texts were not without gains. He knew that as long as he didn't truly fall in love within 30 years, he could wait for the effects of the Yuan demon seven emotions technique to wear off. Thus, Zhongsho put on a straight face and said in a cold and hard tone, "Why are you looking for me? I heard that there are many spiritual items from the cloud desolate era buried in the Qin Emperor tomb, and they are of great use to our demon sect. Now that the Qin Emperor tomb is opening in advance, how can I not come? However, a few months ago, I offended Junior Brother Han too much. If I am with him, I might be in danger of being raped and then killed. Thinking about it, it is better to follow my lover into the tomb." While speaking, Su Xiaoxiao was sizing up Zhongsho. It seemed like this guy really didn't know about the use of the wings. If not, Zhongsho would be the strongest person below End Realm in the cloud world. If he didn't use it himself and gave it to Xiuguan, then he would be another Shizi. He could suppress the entire cloud world by himself. Today, he didn't need to purposely hide his tracks and could openly enter the tomb. He had Saint Realm strength and wasn't suppressed, so he could do whatever he wanted. He could disregard all the mechanisms and formations within. Although there were many experts here, all of them added together couldn't take one sword from Zhongsho. He had an impulse to tell them about the Xian increasing law containing wings. However, in the next moment, a person flashed across her mind. Since that person let her know everything about the wings, then how could he not have anything to defend against her? Although that person had left the cloud world, he still left a huge shadow in her heart that was filled with misfortune. She sighed, and a teasing expression appeared on her face. Although the Yuan demon seven emotion technique doesn't absorb blood, the closer it gets, the more it needs the nourishment of the seven emotions. The seven emotions are joy, anger, sadness, fear, love, evil, and lust. I am just one step away from completing my inner heaven and earth. However, who knows how many people I will harm at this step? Since I have fallen in love with my lover, I am planning to turn over a new leaf and not harm people anymore. If there is something in the tomb that can help me reach the Tao, wouldn't it be the best of both worlds? So, I'm really helpless. Do you dare to let me leave? Zhongsho scoffed coldly. What was this? Could a gentleman be bullied? Based on what this woman said, it was like the people she harmed in the future were all his responsibility. If not for the Yuan demon seven emotion technique, he would have killed her with one sword. Forget it, up to you. He sighed in his heart. In the end, he was still controlled by this woman. For some reason, he really didn't want this woman to use the Yuan demon seven emotion technique to charm everyone. However, it was okay for her to follow. With him there, she wouldn't be able to play any tricks. Su Xiaoxiao laughed when she heard this. Her voice was like a crisp silver bell. I know a little about the Qin Emperor tomb. Maybe I can help you. Her gaze swept past the four of them. When she saw Shan Yuexian, a trace of surprise flashed across her beautiful eyes. This person seemed to be from the Mahis faction. Chu Shui felt really depressed. She wanted to pull out her blade to chase Su Xiaoxiao away from her master, but for some reason, the animosity disappeared. She actually felt that this woman was cute and close at this moment. No matter how slow she was, she felt that something wasn't right. It was like her emotions were being controlled by someone. However, since Zhongsho had already spoken, it wasn't good for her to continue attacking. She could only furiously turn her head away. The cat ears on her head stood up to show that she was really angry. Zhongsho didn't bother about Su Xiaoxiao and continued to look into the distance. Just a moment later, a loud explosion was heard from the other side. The giant green stone that sealed the tomb door disappeared along with the vengeful power. Under the impact of the spiritual formation, it suddenly shattered. In an instant, several thousand miles around, numerous glows charged up from all directions. They gathered towards the tomb door. A bright glow flashed in Samuraim's eyes as he stepped forwards. The blue fire Xian turtle instantly understood, 12 pairs of ice wings spreading out as it went all out. In just 100 breaths, it was 100 miles away from the tomb door. Then a cold scoff spread out from above. Scram! A wave of extremely strong energy suddenly pressed down on the area nearby. It caused the people who pounced over to hold their breaths. Zhongsho was shocked as he looked towards where the voice came from. Night Demon? Why would a Saint Realm expert from the Night Demon race come here? Chapter 11:16. With the suppression of power, half of the dozens of people who flew over were forced away. At this moment, they were both shocked and furious. Zhongsho also didn't understand. Were those few World Protector Venerables useless? They actually allowed the Night Demon race Saint Realm expert to enter the Cloud World so easily? He was filled with questions, but Zhongsho's reaction wasn't slow at all. Right away, the blue fire Xian turtle took out the two black Xian purple hero shields. The two shields had been upgraded to intermediate grade celestial artifacts and were really thick and heavy. At this moment, it wasn't strenuous for them to block that strong power. Osamu Hara scoffed coldly. With a thought, the jade puppet punched towards the air. Tremendous forces collided, causing heaven and earth to rumble and shake endlessly. In the explosion of stellar energy, the blue fire-black tortoise accelerated and crashed into the tomb door. After charging in, Zhongsho noticed that there were more than 7 people who entered before him. They weren't forced back by the Night Demon race Saint Realm expert. At this moment, their bodies flashed and they disappeared into the tunnel ahead. Samuraim's eyes flashed. He thought to himself that these people were all really confident and had definitely made many preparations. There were numerous tunnels within the tomb, and it was a giant maze. If one didn't know the details and entered, there was a 99% chance that one would get lost in the tomb. He looked around carefully, and Zhongsho sucked in a cold breath. What strong Vengeful power! Legend had it that the place where the Qin Emperor tomb was buried was where the top dragon veins were. However, after many changes, East Kunlun Mountain was broken, and now it was deep in the abyss. The location of the palace tomb had long since become a place of extreme evil. Even 100,000 Yangchild essence blood was unable to solve it. It was only able to chase away a portion of it. This was the 9 levels of Yang, the person with the highest Yang in the world. If it was any other time, who knew what would happen? After the blue fire Xian turtle shrunk its body to a small size, it continued to follow Zhongsho's instructions and flew swiftly within the tomb. Its 5 limbs were all retracted into the tortoise shell, while its 2 shields protected its sides. Along the way, he flipped open the stone walls in all directions. Countless crossbows shot down. The tortoise-shell shield let out a series of tinkling noises. Almost every arrow was equivalent to the full force attack of a spirit realm cultivator. However, even though it seemed like he was running amok and had nothing to fear, he had actually avoided most of the traps. The most dangerous thing here was not the crossbow bolts, but the highly toxic acid that would spray out in a large area if there were any unusual movements. It could corrode metal, and even immortal artifacts would not be able to withstand it. There was also a type of poisonous fog that was colorless and odorless. Not even soul awareness could detect it. Unknowingly, one would be poisoned. Even deity realm cultivators could only hold on for a short while. After a short while, their flesh and bones would rot and turn into a pile of mush. There were also various spells hidden within. As soon as the restriction was touched, it would be activated. Power was boundless. Zhongsho had the blueprints left by Zhongshuan, and also the Mahist faction legacy that Shun Yuexian collected. He knew most of these mechanisms like the back of his hand, which was why he was able to pass through the tunnel so easily. But even so, there were still a few times where he almost died here. This caused the blue fire Xian turtle to be even more careful. The blue fire on its body burned, wrapping its body in thick Xian ice to isolate it from the outside. Zhongshu used spells to shrink his body to the size of a thumb, standing at the front of the two pieces of the tortoise shell. He used his mind to control the direction of the blue fire Xian turtle while thinking about the tomb in front of it. Weird. How did the night demon race know about it? How did they enter the cloud world? His heart was filled with questions. Zhongshu turned around and asked Osamu Hara, "What do you think of that person's strength?" At this moment, the one with the most right to speak was naturally Osamu Hara, who had fought that person with the jade puppet. Although he saw some clues, he wasn't sure. He should be similar to the saint realm of our cloud world. Osamu Hara's face was solemn as he took in a deep breath. "My jade puppet can at most last for 6 hours." 6 hours? Zhongshu was distracted. In other words, this person was under little suppression in the cloud world. Or his strength far exceeded people of the same grade. The possibility of the latter was extremely small. However, the night demon race was an alien race outside of the cloud world. Logically speaking, they should be several times stronger than the saint realm of the cloud world. The reason why the Liu family world burning blood was valued, apart from being able to break through space, was because it could help one remove the restraining power of a world. However, how did this night demon saint do it? Why did he come to the Qin Emperor tomb? Did he come for the Copper Men? The Qin Emperor created the 12 Copper Men to shock the world and also to defend against the alien race. He once wiped out the invading alien race from the cloud world. According to the legends, the copper puppets had some intelligence and were born with a strong aversion to the auras of outsiders. This person might not be able to get what he wanted. That person should be born in the cloud world. One of his parents is most probably from our cloud world. Su Xiaoxiao was really calm as Zhongshu looked at her with a weird gaze. "Do you know how many night demon generals died in the hands of the Qin army when they invaded the world? How many Saint Realm experts were suspected to be trapped and sealed by the Qin dynasty? How many god weapons and treasures of the various races were buried here? Apart from that, I also heard that the few Emperor race cultivation techniques of the night demon race were lost in the cloud world." Zhongshu understood. Su Xiaoxiao smiled. "Who knows? Maybe he came for your unlimited beginning and end Buddha." Unlimited light is one of the abilities that the night demon race fears the most. The night demon race feared light. Their combat strength multiplied at night, and they were really weak during the day. When their cultivation grew stronger, they would be able to block it. However, the night demon race was still really afraid of abilities related to light. The Buddhist faction Dari Rulai suppressed the treasure light world alone, causing the night demon army to not dare to invade, protecting the peace of the dozens of worlds around. "Your Majesty, be careful. Something isn't right." Zhongshu was in deep thought when Shun Yuexian reminded him. His spiritual sense also felt a chill. Zhongshu didn't think much, controlling the blue fire Xian turtle to move to the side and speed up once more. In the next moment, hundreds of black dots the size of specks of dust rushed out from the walls and spread out in all directions. Then, they silently exploded. A ball of black light swelled and scattered. When everything returned to normal, Zhongshu saw that a full 10 miles of land behind him was swallowed by the black light. All matter was wiped out. The soil, the walls, there were no marks left like they were originally like that. Great destruction technique? Zhongshu's face turned green. He looked closely at the blueprint in his hand and confirmed that there were no relevant records. Only then did he ask Shun Yuexian, "Is this part of the legacy that your Maha's family lost, or was it not there from the start?" Not all of the 10 blacksmiths who designed the tomb for the Qin Emperor left the legacy. Shun Yuexian tried his best, but only managed to find 3 people in these few months. Naturally, the mechanism structure of the tomb was lacking. Shun Yuexian smiled bitterly. "The area around here was built by my ancestor. There shouldn't be such a restriction." Zhongshu nodded when he heard this. This should be the changes that the Qin Emperor made after the matter. Shun Yuexian said, "Luckily, it is hard to change the original structure, and there are no flaws. Even if there are improvements, it is limited. Since I know one, I know the other. However, I need time to deduce it." Zhongsho shook his head. 99 double suns, only one day. Let's talk about it when we reach that place. Although the mechanisms here were modified and the four of them worked together, they didn't need to fear anything. Even if there were dangers, they were confident that they could take it. The Vengeful power was too thick, and all sorts of unbelievable things could happen. After 99 double suns, the Yang power would become weaker. They could at most stay for 3 days in the tomb, and they couldn't afford to waste time. They charged forwards, and as expected, in just a dozen breaths, they charged into a half-sealed path. It looked like a dead end, but Zhongsho tossed out a formation disc with hundreds of celestial stones embedded in it. Then, a black light flashed, also silently causing all the walls and soil tens of miles around to disappear. However, it wasn't an annihilation technique, but an imitation of his unlimited beginning and end ability. At this moment, a giant hole appeared in front of the four of them and the beast. At the bottom of the pit, there was another path leading to the tomb. Zhongsho smiled and ordered the blue fire Xian turtle to turn into light and enter. This was the true Qin Emperor tomb. The outer layer was just a fake tomb to confuse people. The real and the fake were stacked on top of each other. Even the spirit arrays and mechanisms used inside were almost exactly the same, all in order to deceive the world. However, after reaching this layer, it was obviously much more dangerous. In just a moment, there were several loud bangs which caused the entire body of the blue fire Xian turtle to shake. Dozens of arrows with power comparable to the initial level of the divine realm were mixed in with hundreds and thousands of crossbow bolts, heavily hitting the two giant shields. Even the extremely strong blue fire Xian turtle couldn't take it. Many dents appeared on the two black Xian purple hero shields. It caused Blue Fire's heart to feel pained. He had just gotten these two celestial artifact shields a dozen days ago. All of a sudden, he was a little terrified and didn't dare to charge forwards. Zhongsho laughed instead of being angry. He kicked the head of the blue fire Xian turtle. These two shields are broken. I will find better ones for you in the future. What are you afraid of? 2 normal celestial treasures. Can you use them for the rest of your life? The blue fire Xian turtle was delighted. Thus, the two shields continued to dance about. This time, it was afraid that its black Xian purple hero shield wouldn't break. It even purposely used the shield to block those God Realm arrows. Only when Zhongsho couldn't take it anymore and kicked out did it stop. Oh, there is someone here? After turning a corner, they got closer and closer to the main tomb room. Zhongsho suddenly sensed something and looked forwards. Chapter 11:17. With the spiritual formation blocking, Zhongsho's spiritual sense couldn't reach far. However, he could hear the sounds of weapons clashing and spells exploding. This was where Zhongsho was at a disadvantage. Even if he used King Path martial arts, his combat strength could compare to Saint Realm. However, his spiritual sense was far from it. Many times it would be limited. Who knew who it was that actually entered the main tomb before him? Hesitating slightly, Zhongsho told the blue fire Xian turtle to head towards another path. The paths in the tomb were connected in all directions, and this was not the only one that led to the main tomb. He wasn't in a rush to meet these people, and he also didn't want to have any conflicts with them before he saw the 12 copper men. Actually, the more people that could enter the main tomb, the better. The more experts there were, the more pressure it would place on the formation. Even if he obtained Zhongshuan's spiritual formation blueprints and some of the mechanisms of Mahe's faction, he only grasped a little of the mysteries within the tomb. However, even if he only grasped a little, it was still terrifying. If he entered the main tomb too early, he would just be asking to die. At this moment, his target was another part of the main tomb. It was a storehouse that stored funerary items in Zhongxian's tomb map. However, after a short while, Zhongsho had a solemn expression and told the blue fire Xian turtle to stop. One could faintly hear waves of uniform roars coming from the front of the tunnel. It was like tens of thousands of iron hooves were stomping on the ground, causing the ground below to shake. Zhongsho hesitated whether or not to order the blue fire Xian turtle to turn back, and head toward another path. Then, he heard a sharp holler from the front. "Where did you come from? You dare to attack my Emperor Palace?" The voice was majestic, and it caused one's eardrums to hurt. The sound of thunder suddenly sped up. In just 2 breaths, an iron cavalry flood charged over from the opposite side. 300 cavalry lined up in front, filling up the entire path. Looking out, there seemed to be an endless amount of people behind. They were all dressed in black and gave off a cold aura. They didn't look like they were alive. His aura was cold and vast, almost surpassing all the profound gray Dao soldiers Zhongsho had seen before. The person at the front was riding a giant beast that was 30 feet tall. Its hooves were stepping on raging flames. His figure was also far more burly than that of an ordinary person. His entire body was covered in a sturdy armor full of sharp spikes. He held a large axe in his hand, and a chain hammer hung from his waist. His cold gaze penetrated through the helmet as he looked at Lin Mingya. Disturbing His Majesty's peace is a crime punishable by death. Die. He rushed forward and chopped down with his axe. The expressions of the 5 people on the turtle changed slightly. The strength of this black-armored knight was at most at the deity realm, but when combined with the tens of thousands of cavalry behind him, the might of this axe even surpassed the saint realm. "Brother Yuan, please help me." He knew that the blue fire Xian turtle wouldn't be able to block this axe. Zhongsho didn't hesitate, and the god-refined sword shot out from his sleeves. Tens of thousands of sword lights sprayed out like a blooming lotus, layer upon layer blocking in front of him. Of one origin sword, within 100 feet, it is my unbreakable sword domain. The lotus formed by the sword shadow was broken layer by layer. The giant axe was still like a hot knife through butter. However, when it was 100 feet away, it was still blocked. Numerous sword shadows shot out and filled up this 100 feet of space. It continued to block, continued to reduce the strength, and continued to wear it down. A thread of blood seeped out from Zhongsho's lips. Luckily, the jade puppet had taken out a white jade bow and shot 3 arrows at the black armor cavalry. "Mai's jade puppet? Small tricks?" The latter let out a soft snort and withdrew the axe light slightly. With just a small change, the 3 small white jade arrows were all shattered. It was so simple and effortless. Zhongsho looked on and instantly sucked in a deep cold breath. Even if the 5 of them worked together, they might not be able to win against such an opponent. "Let's go." The blue fire Xian turtle didn't need him to instruct it and decisively fled. In just a 300th of a second, it flew out 100,000 feet and exited the tunnel. The black-armored cavalry muttered to himself, "I am already dead, so why are you still alive? All of you die." The tens of thousands of iron cavalry behind him galloped once more. All around, a weird spiritual light shone. Their speed wasn't fast, but with the buffs of the spiritual formation within the tomb, it far exceeded the jade fire. At this moment, the sound of iron hooves could be heard from all around the tomb. "Damn it, we can't escape." Osamuhara's face was ashen white. "Damn, the speed of these dead things is actually faster than me flying at full speed." Zhongsho frowned. No matter how fast he was, there was nothing he could do now. The surrounding passageways had already been blocked off by these black armored cavalry. Could it be that they had to fight here first? He had just entered the tomb, and he was already lightly injured. Looking at the situation, did he have to use his trump card early on? Which is why I said that I might be able to help you. Su Xiaoxiao chuckled and looked around calmly. "Darling, can you use an illusion to hide us first?" Zhongsho was stunned, thinking to himself, would illusions work here? Those cavalry who were wrapped in vengeful energy and had no signs of life at all could be easily broken if they were willing. However, it was okay to try. In the end, it would just be a battle. He let the blue fire Xian turtle float up and stick close to the stone wall. Samuraim's blood light flashed. At the same time, a green illusion appeared behind his head. Not only did he use illusions to cover everyone, but he also used his world-burning blood to control space, to form layers of space barriers to block off any aura. As expected from the nine-tailed sky fox bloodline, your illusions are really amazing. Why don't you use them normally? What a waste. Su Xiao used the fan to cover her face and giggled. He didn't see her do anything. However, many spiritual patterns formed around her body and expanded outwards. It was like a ring of light had appeared behind her body. Zhong Shaxin was originally filled with annoyance. He was really nervous as he paid attention to the movements of the black-armored cavalry. However, after Su Xiao cast the spell, he calmed down for some reason. This is the Yuan Demon 7 emotion technique. How domineering. It could cause the enemy to not have any fighting spirit or hatred. It could also cause one to go crazy in an instant. What was more shocking was the scenes in front of him. Those black-armored cavalry who charged over didn't notice the 5 of them, and the blue fire Xian turtle. Even the black-armored cavalry with the giant axe looked over curiously and didn't bother anymore. He led the tens of thousands of cavalry to turn towards another tunnel. Zhong Shaxin found it weird. This fellow definitely noticed that something was up with this place. After all, they were within the Qin Emperor tomb, and this strong cavalry obviously had a deep connection with the formation here. With just a thought, he would be able to find out where he was. However, the current situation was as if nothing had happened at all. When this place regained silence, the sound of iron hooves slowly disappeared. Zhong Shou had a weird expression on his face as he dissipated the illusionary technique. As for the other 3, they also looked to Su Xiao with strange gazes. Zhong Shou and Osamu Hara guessed what was going on. However, Chu Shui was still confused. Don't underestimate my Yuan Demon 7 emotion technique. Happiness, anger, worry, fear, love, hate, lust, and resentment are all within the 7 emotions. Su Xiao said naturally. These people were buried with the Qin Emperor in their prime, which is why they have grievances and hate living people. However, since they have grievances, be it saints or dead things, they are all under my control. Chu Shui couldn't bear to see Su Xiao being so proud. She pouted and didn't bother anymore. At this moment, Chun Yuxian sighed softly. Now, I finally know where the 300,000 great Qin cavalry that roamed the cloud world back then went and why they disappeared. The 5 of them kept silent when they heard that. They had all experienced the strength of the great Qin cavalry, as expected from the top Xian Grey Dao soldiers in the world. Unfortunately, the Qin Emperor's lifespan was too short. If not, with the strength of the 12 copper men and the strength of the hundreds of thousands of cavalry, he might have swept many worlds and become another sky-burning celestial dynasty, Osamu Hara said with a mocking tone. Even if he died, he wasn't willing to leave his strong army to his descendants. It seems like this Qin Emperor really felt that he would revive and sweep the cloud world once more. I heard that the Crown Prince was really wise and won the hearts of the people. However, after the Qin Emperor died, he was killed. However, to me, whether or not it was fake is another matter. The Qin dynasty flourished because of him and also fell because of him. Zhong Shou broke out into a laugh, although he didn't think much about it. He had to admit that Osamu Hara's words did make sense. After the Qin Emperor died, the Qin Emperor's tomb was still built for many years. Only when the cloud world started to attack did it stop. If it was Fu Su, he wouldn't have continued. However, there was no point in thinking about all that. He was more concerned about the situation at hand. I can only use 10% of my King Path martial arts in this tomb. Entering this tomb is the same as entering an enemy country. He felt really fortunate. Luckily, he had the help of the 1,000-Eye Redstone to step into late celestial realm. Not only did he complete his inner heaven and earth, but he also formed 3 threads of celestial power. He had one more life-saving trump card. If not, entering the tomb would be 100 times more dangerous. This item also gave off a strange feeling. Ever since it entered the palace, it was as if a trace of malice had wrapped around it, lingering around it without dispersing. The deeper it went, the more uneasy it felt. Are we being targeted by someone? Zhong Shou frowned, sneaking a glance at Su Xiao. However, He didn't notice anything weird. Thinking about it, Zhongsho took out a black jade piece and crushed it. A mass of black light spread out and enveloped everyone. Su Xiaoxiao asked curiously, "What is this?" "My country father-in-law gave me a piece of black jade." Zhongsho didn't hide it and said generously. It was said that he worshipped it for a full 49 days. With the powder covering the body, it can block out most evil techniques for 3 days. Su Xiaoxiao acknowledged. She knew that Zhongsho's country father-in-law Kong Rui was a top divination expert in the world. She didn't use energy to block and just released it, allowing the powder to land on her clothes. Pretty much at the same time, a person dozens of tunnels away frowned. His spiritual sense connection was actually broken. To be continued. Chapter 11:18. Pretty much at the same time, a person dozens of tunnels away frowned. His spiritual sense connection was actually broken. Not only this person, but the several people present also stopped in their tracks. Most of them had dark skin and a pair of wings on their backs. At this moment, their expressions were really ugly. There were also a few people who were formless and shapeless, like they were floating ghosts. One could only see a faint shadow. "What is going on? I can't sense him. This doesn't match your promise." "What is there to be surprised about?" "That Zhongsho isn't a dead person. On the contrary, he is the top person in the cloud world in these thousands of years. He has been through hundreds of battles. So how would he not be wary of this? He should have noticed that something was amiss when we followed him." The person being questioned had a calm expression on his face. He didn't seem to care about the gazes of the people around him. Moreover, since that Zhongsho has a divination expert like Kong Rui, how would he not have any methods to defend against such an evil technique? However, we can't find his location, so how can we surround and kill him? There are many paths within the tomb and many restrictions and mechanisms. Blindly searching is useless and might even lead to death. That red-robed person laughed. "How would I not know?" However, there is no need to worry. Since that Zhongsho has entered the tomb, he won't leave in a short time. Moreover, how would a curse personally planted by the Saint Venerable be normal? How would normal techniques be able to suppress it? Everyone, please calm down. Speaking of which, I have been finding it weird. What is your Saint Venerable trying to do? One of them said coldly, "Don't tell me that it is just to take that Zhongsho's life." Why not? Dozens of our demon sects were wiped out, and it is not an exaggeration to say that our hatred is as deep as the ocean. That red-robed person laughed. "It is this junior brother Han beside me who hates Zhongsho for stealing his wife. He hates this Qian ruler to the bone. Junior brother is doted on by the Saint Venerable, so it is not surprising that he personally acted to help junior brother Han get back his face." That junior brother Han snorted coldly, obviously extremely dissatisfied. There was a fierce glint in his eyes. He gritted his teeth and tensed his muscles. The red-robed man's tone changed. "Naturally, there's also the reason why all of you aren't afraid of the Liu family blaming you." "Afraid of the Liu clan? You want to borrow our sabers?" The cold laughter rang out once more. This time it was bone-chilling. "I keep feeling that the scheme of your holy venerate is not that simple. Since they had already joined forces, it was better for them to know each other's background. Being so secretive doesn't seem like the way of an ally." "Allies?" The red-robed man's eyes were filled with mockery. "The problem is that your two clans have no other choice. Boundless light, endless darkness. I'm afraid this is the will of the heavens to annihilate your two races. If he missed this opportunity, it would be even more impossible for him to accomplish anything in the future. Could it be that he really had to wait until he grew up and stepped into the Saint Realm? Even if his Qian celestial dynasty was wiped out, as long as the Liu family sky-burning Saint dynasty was still there, his future would be huge. He would become an end-realm Saint Venerable sooner or later. Therefore, the three of us are not allies. We're just temporarily working together to take what we need. As for the true goal of my holy venerable, it is okay to tell all of you. That Zhongsho's life belongs to all of you. My demon sect just needs to take one of the items. For the holy venerable to pay attention to it, it must be a top treasure. It must be really important. This doesn't seem to have anything to do with all of you. The tomb path was instantly silent. After a long while, one of them spoke up once more. Speaking of the hatred of snatching your wife, is your saint daughter reliable? I have heard of your cloud world human race, 9, secret Yuan demon, 7 emotion technique. However, once a woman falls in love, she will be unreasonable. As long as that Zhong Shou is slightly wary, we will most probably fail this time. You don't have to worry about this. When the red-robed man heard this, he gave out a cruel smile. She doesn't know about this and doesn't know that she doesn't have much time left. Before she dies, she might be able to give that Zhong Shou a huge surprise. Zhong Shou was totally oblivious to the discussions dozens of miles away. After sprinkling the powder of the inky jade ornament, he felt a lot calmer. Who knows if it was because he was comforting himself or because he had escaped from some kind of danger. That intent seems to have dissipated. However, who is plotting against me? Zhong Shou instinctively thought about Gong Yuan. He had to admit that at this moment, when he was deep in the tomb, it was the easiest time to be assassinated. He couldn't use King Path martial arts, and the few End Realm Saint Venerables who had colluded with him couldn't interfere. It could be said that his combat strength was pulled down from Saint Realm. However, he felt that something wasn't right. What he sensed just now was even more dangerous. Gong Yuan's true and illusionary switching and heaven movement mother and sun sword were strong, but they couldn't compare to that spiritual sense, which gave him a sense of danger. His expression was solemn as he looked into the void. Zhong Shou ordered the blue fire Xian turtle to speed up and continue to flee forwards. They knew that there were hundreds of thousands of Great Qin iron cavalry patrolling the tunnels. Naturally, the 5 of them were much more careful. Shun Yuexian released some mechanical birds which flew into the tunnels to monitor everything. They tried their best not to come into contact with the black armor cavalry. At this moment, spiritual energy fluctuations spread out from within the tomb. It was obvious that many people had entered the main tomb. They were either defending against the traps and restrictions in the tomb, or fighting against those Great Qin cavalrymen who had turned into dead objects. A few of them were really close, just a few tunnels away. Zhong Shou followed the map and arrived in front of stone door in just a short while. He didn't try to break it, directly tossing out a few formation discs that he had crafted into the distance. They stuck close to the stone door. Along with the darkness that seemed like it could swallow, everything suddenly expanding and then disappearing. The tunnel and stone door seemed like it had been bitten. A large portion of the matter had disappeared. Only a thin layer of the thick stone door was left. This was the benefit of the endless darkness ability. To forcefully break the spiritual formation seals, one didn't need to be afraid of suffering a backlash. It was also totally silent, and there was pretty much no spiritual energy at all. It wouldn't startle anyone. Unfortunately, it consumed a lot of celestial stones. Each disc was comparable to a low-grade celestial artifact. Before Zhong Shou came, he had only crafted a few. Now, he was only left with 2 that he had other uses for. However, at this moment, there was no need for him to do anything. The jade puppet abruptly punched out, smashing the already fragile stone door into pieces. At this moment, what appeared in front of everyone was an extremely huge tomb. It was 80,000 feet from north to south and 38,000 feet from east to west. Numerous lifelike terracotta figures were lined up neatly within the tomb. Looking out, there were at least 2 million people, a full one. 2 million square formations. Chariots, mounts, weapons, armor, everything was there. Although they were terracotta figures, they gave off an aura like they could swallow the world. It's the Qin Emperor's terracotta soldiers. Legend had it that after the Qin Emperor died, he burned tens of millions of terracotta soldiers to be buried with him to protect his tomb. A weird expression flashed across Zhong Shou's eyes. Then, he looked towards a small room at the north of the tomb. With 1 million troops, naturally, one needed enough resources to support the army. The slightly smaller room was where the items were stored. It stored enough resources to support an army of 1 million soldiers for several years. Zhongsho was about to fly into the air and charge in. He saw Su Xiaoxiao looking at the 1 million terracotta army with an ashen white face. What strong grievances! Pretty much all of them are vengeful corpses. They are about to wake up. Zhongsho was shocked and looked over carefully. As expected, powder fell from the surface of the terracotta soldiers. A portion of them had cracks on the outer shell. It was as if there was something struggling inside. Can your Yuan Demon 7 emotion technique control them? I can't. There are too many of them. Su Xiaoxiao shook her head and then gritted her teeth. I can at most suppress them for 15 minutes, she smiled. However, if you agree to meet me once and let me do as I please. Even if it is just 2 hours, I will try my best to do it. In the past, I learned many bed techniques, but didn't have a chance to use them. Osamu Hara coughed dryly. Su Xiaoxiao's aura was like that of fairy. However, the words that she said were really unbearable to the ear and made one's heart pound. Even he couldn't help but think about it. This Zhongsho was really lucky. Chu Shue's face turned red as she muttered. As expected, she is a demon girl. Zhongsho didn't bother, increasing his speed as he charged into the north room. Then, the glow in his eyes swelled, and he was filled with joy. It was a small mountain-like celestial stone that was piled up here. Roughly looking, one knew that there were at least 100,000 of them, and their grades weren't low. Mind stones weren't easy to store. Even in a spiritual land, after 10,000 years, their grades would drop. However, celestial stones didn't have such a problem. The longer they were stored, the thicker the spiritual energy they accumulated. Compared to the pile in front of him, the ones he snatched from the demon sect a few days ago were just a drop in the ocean. Only the gains from the Judu Xianing could be compared to this. If I am the only one using it, it is enough for the Book of Ian to speed up by 1,000 years. No, 1,200 years is enough. However, if his cultivation rose to God realm, this number would be reduced by 10 times. Ancient Qin, how rich was they? Zhongsho felt that it was unbelievable, and then he looked at other things. To the side, there were piles of well-maintained weapons and armors. Zhongsho casually summoned a sword, a set of armor, and a crossbow. He tested them in his hands, and the joy on his face grew thicker. Even after 10,000 years, they were still sharp and strong. Due to the artificer, they were even better than now. Only the bowstring of the crossbow had lost some flexibility. However, that was just a small matter and it was easy to change. In this tomb, there were 3 million sets of armor, 800,000 longswords, 640,000 halberds, and 400,000 crossbows. A quarter of them were Big Dipper swordsmen and Big Dipper crossbow soldier equipment. Chapter 1119. At this moment, the Qian didn't lack manpower and also didn't lack low-grade cultivators. Pretty much every few months, there would be a new stone mine, so they had sufficient financial resources. However, it didn't expand much. Even after the battle with the Taishang, they only had 7 million, amongst which there were only 300,000 Xian and Huang Grey Dao soldiers, even if one added in the outer region. It wasn't that they didn't have enough manpower, but that they didn't have enough decent armor and weapons. Blacksmiths who could craft the Big Dipper, Sky Fox, and Blood Cloud armor, as well as the corresponding spiritual artifacts, weren't so easy to develop. However, at this moment, the weapons and armor stored in the treasury could allow the Qian to easily equip 1 million troops, especially those 200,000 Big Dipper sword soldiers and Big Dipper crossbow soldiers, which could be used right away. It could allow the number of Huang Grey Dao soldiers under the Qian to increase by close to double. Zhongsho didn't hesitate and directly said, "Let's split the celestial stones into 10 portions. Su Xiaoxiao and Mr. Shan will each take 30, while the 2 of you will each take 1. The other 2 portions, along with all the weapons and armor here, will belong to me." Osamu Hara smiled and didn't object, directly taking 1/5 of the celestial stones. Zhongsho's distribution seemed unfair, but in terms of effort, Osamu Hara actually did very little. He relied on the map in Zhongsho's hands and Shun Yueshuan's mechanism techniques to be able to come here unscathed. Although Su Xiaoxiao joined in halfway, she was able to suppress the Terracotta army and break away from the tens of thousands of cavalry because of her Yuan Demon 7 emotion technique. It wasn't an exaggeration to say that she contributed the most. This close to 13,000 low-grade celestial stones was like picking it up for free. Such wealth was enough to buy 5 Earth-grade spaceships. Zhongsho's distribution was really fair and convincing. Following which, Osamu Hara looked to the side. I have no use for these pills, so they are all yours. At the corner of the tomb, there were many rows of medicine racks. There were millions of them. However, just by looking at the medicine bottle, one could tell that its grade was not high. So I have one too. Su Xiaoxiao put her hands together and looked at Zhongsho in a daze. My things belong to you. Actually, there's no need to draw such a clear distinction. The corners of Zhongsho's mouth twitched. He waved his sleeves slightly, and with a wave of his transcendence energy, he collected all the low-level medicinal pills. He wondered if these pills were meant for the living or the dead. Although there were the words yang, cultivating pill, qi nourishing pill, and fitness pill, it really made people feel uneasy. Anyways, when he returned, he would let Xian Yuan Iran identify it first. The Qian didn't have enough blacksmiths and alchemists. If he brought these pills back, they would be of great help. After these materials were the most precious treasures in this tomb. On both sides, there were 40 compartments that were only 1,000 feet in size. There were 40 sets of armor in total. 30 of them were a set made up of several top-grade magic tools. It was similar to his half of the Jun Tian celestial armor. 10 of them were even low-grade immortal artifacts. Obviously, they were meant for powerful generals to wear. They were all in the style of Qin, cold and vicious. Just now, the Qin cavalry general who was buried with him was wearing this kind of armor. Zhongsho had personally experienced it. The strength of this celestial artifact armor was really terrifying, pretty much increasing the strength of the enemy by 5 times. Amongst which, the 3 sets of women's armor made Zhongsho really surprised. If he brought them back to Kong Yao and Shi Ruolin, he would be much more at ease when the 2 of them fought on the battlefield. The other people didn't need these 40 sets of armor. Zhongsho used some symbolic celestial stones to exchange for them and kept them all. Logically speaking, it should have been a huge harvest. However, Zhongsho frowned. This time, the things he obtained in the Qin Emperor tomb were things that were beneficial to the country, but useless to him. Instead, he spent a lot of the celestial stones that he obtained. Fortunately, the spiritual items that were stored in the 2 compartments did not disappoint him. Celestial pills that could increase one's strength, spiritual liquid that could strengthen the body. There were all sorts of processed celestial treasures that hadn't been crafted into artifacts, fragrant celestial brews, etc. There was even a small storage room that stored large amounts of books that recorded Qin-era techniques. After one round, the 5 of them all had small gains. They didn't find any special heaven-grade spiritual treasures, but they were still satisfied. I heard that there are a total of 36 such chambers in the tomb. Osamu Hara's eyes shone with a weird light, and his expression was one of greed. If he could take 2 or 3 more, then he wouldn't have to worry about cultivation resources for the next few decades. Zhongsho laughed. There is no such thing. 36 chambers protect the main one, but this one is actually the biggest. The others are far from it. It was also because of Mr. Shun's calculations that the defense of the 4-9 Yin-Yang Dragon Formation would be at its weakest on the 9th day of the double 9 suns. Without 2 to 3 days, one can forget about opening the other chambers. Who knew what methods the other people who entered the tomb had? However, Zhongsho was really out of tricks. Even if he wanted to take the treasures, he had to wait until the formation in the tomb truly collapsed. Osamu Hara couldn't help but look at Shun Yuexian with a weird expression. The latter was really calm. The dragon formation here was the work of a qi cultivator. However, if he couldn't deduce the rough idea of the formation after looking at Zhongshuan's blueprint, then he would have lived for nothing. Osamu Hara's face was filled with regret. However, he knew that Zhongsho definitely wouldn't lie to him. We can't stay here any longer. Since that is the case, then let's go. If they weren't strong, the 2 million terracotta warriors outside wouldn't be able to suppress them. 2 million vengeful corpse soldiers wasn't a joke. Zhong Shou still stood on the spot, frowning as he looked at his feet. Just now, he had a special feeling. It didn't come from his mind, but from the darkness Sirius that merged into his soul. Since he stepped into the celestial realm, he rarely used these three. However, as Zhong Shou's cultivation was too high, the darkness Sirius became less and less useful. His opponents were either God Realm or Saint Realm, so Zhong Shou could only rely on King Path martial arts. The amount of soul power that the Sirius could store was like a cup of water on a burning cart. Under Zhong Shou's careful nurturing, the growth of these three Sirius wasn't slow. However, it still couldn't keep up with his own cultivation growth. Why is it sensing the Sirius? Speaking of which, this tomb is the most suitable place for it to grow. Suddenly, he had an idea. Was there something underground that could benefit the Sirius? Hesitating slightly, Zhong Shou took out another endless darkness. While tossing to the ground, he dodged 1,000 feet away. Fairy Su, can you hold on for a few more minutes? Su Xiaoxiao gritted her teeth. Zhong Shou seemed like he was asking, but actually, he didn't give her any chance to reject. At this moment, she could only go all out to activate the 7 emotion technique, causing the spiritual pattern light behind her to spread out. A materialized green light spread and covered the entire tomb. The ball-shaped darkness flashed and silently devoured the soil down to a depth of 30,000 feet. It was a mess in front of him, but he still didn't notice anything. Zhong Shou jumped in, pressing onto the soil layer below. He used his own strength to activate the endless darkness once more. This place wasn't within the range of the 4-9 dragon formation, so he wasn't afraid of being swallowed by the formation. Boundless devouring power was unleashed, and yet another 100,000 feet of earth was completely wiped out. At this moment, everyone heard a gurgling sound and saw that at the bottom of the hole, water was seeping out. The water was pure black, and the eye was only the size of a pinhole. The water that accumulated was just 3 feet wide. It was the gathering of death power, so thick that it was close to materializing. One could see it, and it was also really pure. However, what was strange was that the spring water was also filled with vitality. Osamu Hara instantly sucked in a breath and recalled something. His expression was really interesting. Is this the creation death fountain? Even Su Xiaoxiao, who was suppressing the millions of mercenaries, was shocked when she heard this. She instantly flew over and looked down. Then, her eyes were filled with surprise. Zhong Shou's expression turned serious. He first took out 5 jade bottles and absorbed all the black water according to the agreed ratio. Then, he continued to dig until he found a piece of jade that was about the size of 5 fists. 9 whole life essence stone. It really is the creation death fountain. The 9 whole life essence stone was a heaven-grade spiritual treasure. Legend had it that it contained the purest creation energy when heaven and earth was formed. This was why wherever the 9 whole life essence stone was, living beings would flourish and be able to provide life essence energy. It could fertilize the land and nurture life. The water here was formed because of the 9 whole life essence stone. However, it was at the peak, and above it was the Qin Emperor tomb that gave birth to death energy. The 2 powers were really compatible, which was why the creation death fountain was formed. Unfortunately, the water wasn't pure. The true creation death fountain was formed from the life and death fountain. The death fountain here was just a coincidence. However, it was even rarer, and its effects were only slightly weaker. No wonder the darkness blooming Sirius would have such a huge reaction. The creation death fountain was really nourishing for the Sirius blooming Sirius. It could help this flower mature and even mutate. Although the quality wasn't enough, it could be made up with quantity. The 9 orifice life essence stone had an irregular jade shape. Zhong Shou didn't stand on ceremony and kept the 9 whole life essence stone into his sleeves. In terms of value, the 9 whole life essence stone was undoubtedly the most precious. However, the reason why he was able to notice this treasure was because of him. He had no qualms about taking this treasure. Lin Xuanchuang was going through her end-realm tribulation, and her treasures were pretty much all wasted. She had been searching for suitable treasures or materials. This 9 whole life essence stone and Lin Xuanchuang's source life spirit breathing technique were pretty much a match made in heaven. Who knows what Xian Shuang's master would use to exchange for it? Speaking of which, Lin Xuanchuang still owed him a treasure. Did she feel that the grade was too low and she couldn't take it out? Zhongshou also took 30% of the creation death fountain. He lowered Shen Yueshuan's share to 20%. Just as he was about to toss the bottle to the 4 of them, Zhongshou's eyes shone. He flipped his right hand and kept it into his sleeves, following which the earth layer flipped and 2 blade lights suddenly shone. Chapter 11:20. Just as he was about to toss the jade bottle to the 4 of them, Zhongshou's eyes flashed. He flipped his right hand and kept it into his sleeves. Then, the layer of earth churned, and 2 blade lights suddenly flashed. The blade light was unusually quick and arrived instantly, coincidentally brushing past where Zhongshou's right hand was originally at. If he hadn't noticed in time, those 2 blades would have been enough to slice off Zhongshou's hand. The blade light had no effect and immediately retreated back into the ground. Zhongshou wasn't willing to let it go just like that. A white sword light swept down and smashed into the ground below. Stay! The sword energy that spread out caused the sand to scatter. In the blink of an eye, dozens of extremely sharp sword auras charged down. It locked onto those few auras and cut off their path of retreat. All the living things underground were constantly being minced and cut into pieces. In just a moment, 3 people popped out from the ground on the other side. Their faces were ashen white. It was because they were forced by Zhongshou's sword energy, and also because they had no chance of survival. So, the princess of the netherworld has arrived. Zhongshou's brow rose as he looked at the 3 people in front of him. One of them was his senior sister Gong Xinran, the daughter of the Nether Emperor. The other 2 were Lin Er and Gumya. They were Gong Xinran's personal attendants. However, the 2 of them looked at him with weird gazes. They were filled with respect and also helplessness. It wasn't purely because they were afraid of his sword technique, but there were other emotions mixed within. Anyways, they weren't willing to be enemies with him and were really worried about him. Just now when he slashed out, the 2 of them didn't dare to fight back at all, making him really confused. However, Zhongshou was too lazy to bother and directly looked at Gong Xinran. Sneak attack. Princess, are you trying to be enemies with me? Please give me an explanation for today's matter. Since he was the emperor, he couldn't call himself emperor. Based on what Kong Rue said, if he did that often, he would lower his fate. However, Zhongshou always felt a little awkward with the word emperor. Unless it was a special occasion, he rarely used it. When he used it to deal with matters of the country, it also meant that Zhongshou was really annoyed. The 3 people on the other side could clearly feel the killing intent hidden in those words. Gong Xinran's brow rose up and rage appeared in her eyes. However, when she thought to the battle just now, her eyes were filled with helplessness. In the past few years, her strength had improved by leaps and bounds. His 2 subordinates had also borrowed the help of the spiritual wave to jump several grades. However, in the battle today, Zhongshou's sword was to make them feel despair. To the nether world, to the nether. She to twos, to the nether, to the be to face to use. Thinking about it, Gong Xinran's eyes turned firm, her expression turning cold. Dozens of miles away, I saw a few people using the scent-stealing spirit goo to search for you. Is this news enough to give an explanation? If you want to know more, you need to give me 100 drops of creation death found water. Zhongshou was stunned, thinking to himself that there really was someone plotting against him. The scent-stealing spirit sense bug was a really special bug. Only the few demon sects in the southwest of the cloud world knew how to raise it. To be able to differentiate between scents and spirits, As long as it smelled a bit of other people's aura and spiritual energy, it would be able to track them down. Even tens of thousands of miles away, it would still be able to find it. It was pretty much unsolvable. However, there were really few of them, at most one or two of them existing in the world at the same time. Slightly shocked, Zhongsho shook his head expressionlessly. Once I capture the three of you, I will be able to find out about this. Impossible. Gong Shinran couldn't help but hold the two blades in her hands tightly. In the past, she used the gung metal energy that she wanted to craft into a sickle, but Zhongsho snatched it. At this moment, these two bone blades were the other two top celestial weapons sent over from the netherworld. At this moment, she was like a leopard that was being threatened, accumulating strength. This was the helplessness of being weaker than others. Even if the person opposite her showed a little bit of intent, she had no choice but to fully focus. The Yuan Demon 7 Emotion technique can calm vengeful energy. However, I can also revive these 2 million vengeful corpses. If you don't believe me, you could try. This time it was Zhongsho's turn to be shocked. If it was someone else, he wouldn't believe it. However, this Nine which did have the ability to revive the dead on a large scale. During these few years in the north, the three of them had built up an army of the dead. They were all revived by Xiantian and above cultivators. There were 200,000 of them, and their aura wasn't weak at all. Like she was afraid that he wouldn't believe her, a green glow appeared in her eyes. Su Xiaoxiao's exclamation could be heard from above the cave. Without needing her to remind him, Zhongsho could sense that in the vast tomb, not far away, the cracks in the cracks spread out. The cracks on the 10,000 terracotta statues suddenly became heavier. The vengeful corpses within seemed like they could break out of the seal at any moment. Although these 2 million great Qin terracotta army didn't have the ability to harm the 5 of them. However, if they all revived, he would find it really problematic. It seemed like he really couldn't do anything to this princess of the netherworld. Decisively keeping the god-refined sword, Zhongsho took out 30 drops of creation death fountain water and filled another bottle, casually tossing it over. 30 drops, no more. He obtained a lot of death fountain water this time. Apart from watering the darkness blooming Sirius, he and Chu Shui didn't have any other use for it. Osamuhara was the same. Xinyue Xian might be able to use it when crafting artifacts. Su Xiaoxiao could use it to wash her soul power and strengthen her Yuan Demon 7 Emotion technique, but she didn't need much. This item was really useful to the three of them. Zhongsho didn't care much about just giving up 30 drops. If you want to take things too far, then I won't hesitate to fight. Even if I have to pay a price, I will take the three of you down. After Gong Shinran took the creation death fountain water, she hesitated slightly. Zhongsho's gaze became sharper and sharper. It was obvious that he wasn't going to take a step back. He could only snort softly and say, "Good," following which she probed, "However, this creation death fountain water has little use for you. I have many treasures here. Are you willing to trade?" Zhongsho laughed. That would depend on what price Gong Shinran was willing to pay. The creation death fountain water hadn't appeared in 2,000 years. This item was really precious, and who knows how many corpse refining techniques or demon path cultivators dreamed of it. To the three of them, its value was immeasurable. It was something that one could only hope for and not ask for. Even someone like him, who wasn't good at business, knew that he could raise the price and extort a huge sum from them. Not only him, but above the cave, Osamuhara, Xinyue Xian, and the others all exchanged glances with one another, their eyes filled with smiles. 6 hours later, Zhongsho, who was far away from the tomb, had a solemn expression on his face. The deal with Gong Shinran had ended more than 4 hours ago. A large half of the creation death fountain water had been exchanged. Before this, the three of them had also searched a secret room. 300,000 sets of armor and 10 sets of general-grade furniture all ended up in his hands. Xinyue Xian also exchanged many crafting materials from Gong Shinran, as well as ancient crafting books. Many of the Cloud Desolate era legacies weren't in the Cloud world, but they were spread in the Netherworld. 20% of 240 drops of creation death found water was exchanged for many good things, making Shun Yuexian really satisfied. Su Xiao and Yuan Wushang also changed quite a bit. Although the netherworld was rumored to be a poor place, although the netherworld was said to be in the cloud world, there were some specialties that the cloud world didn't have. For example, vengeful essence formed where numerous dead people gathered. It was a great supplement for Su Xiao's Yuan Demon 7 emotion technique. This trip to the Qin Emperor tomb, just the gains alone made this trip worth it. However, Zhongshu wasn't happy at all. Instead, the sense of danger that had disappeared became even stronger. Night Demon race has 2 Saint Realm, 7 God Realm, and who knows how many Shadow Demon experts. They really think highly of me. Samarim squinted and was filled with questions. The Demon Gate has joined forces with the Night Demon Clan and the Shadow Demon Clan? But why? They didn't mind tearing apart the peace agreement to work with the two of them to plot against me. What made him even more confused was that they didn't contact the Taoist faction and Confucian faction at all. They were just planning on their own. That Wushang Yuan demon didn't seem to fear anything at all. If Zhongshu was killed, then Song Shengdao would counterattack. If Xiuguan wanted to go all out, then even Taisher Demon Lord might not be able to protect him. The Taoist faction and Confucian faction would definitely be happy to watch from the side. Apart from that, there was also the Liu family. Before he had explicitly refused to join the Liu family. At least the 2 Saint Venerables of the Liu family wouldn't let this matter rest. Wushang Yuan Demon should be really clear about the key points within. Unless he stepped into half a step true realm, otherwise he didn't have the ability to go up against all of this. What was Li Bieshue's intention? Did he personally plan this, or did the demon sect people do it on their own? It was said that Han Qing was there too. Was he provoked by the hatred of stealing his wife? Which was why he went all out to work with the alien race. This was a huge risk, and even the demon sect couldn't take it. Everyone in the world would rise up and attack them. The 6 sects were at war with each other, but the outsiders were the only ones that the various sects and clans had to work together against. They could drag one another down in the dark or not, but they definitely couldn't collude with the alien race. Unfortunately, Gong Shinran wasn't able to see much, and what she knew was limited. She only knew that there were at least 4 true Saint Realm Venerables. Your Majesty, if it is as that princess of the Netherworld said. In that case, we will have to change our previous plan slightly. Shen Yueshuan's face was filled with worry as he looked forward. Just 10 miles away was the main tomb of the Qin Emperor. Their original plan was to obtain the treasures of the tomb, and then forcefully break the restrictions here and charge in. However, if they went all out and waited for those 4 Saint Realm Venerables to catch up, what would they do? Chapter 1121. No one should have entered the main tomb. There is no need to rush. Zhongshu was also worried, but he still maintained calmness on the surface. Actually, retreating from the tomb now was the smartest choice. However, no matter what, he wasn't willing to give up on the 12 copper men. However, with a strong enemy at the side, the chances of him getting the copper men were really small. On the contrary, he was in danger of being surrounded and killed. Being in the tomb was like entering an enemy country, and he was unable to use his King Path martial arts. The only thing he could rely on to go up against Saint Realm cultivators was the Book of Ian Extreme Life. He still didn't know about Shun Yueshuan's strength. Osamu Hara's jade puppet could barely go up against one person. Although Chu Shui had the god artifact Blood Moon Blade in his hand, he wasn't the match of a true Saint Realm cultivator. Beside him was Su Xiao, who was also a Demon Path Saint girl. She didn't seem weak, but since he dared to set up such a situation, how could he not be confident? Once they fought, Zhongshu knew that he would be the one to lose. Even if he won, it would be a tough victory. At least half of the 4 of them would die. How would they have the energy to fight Yin Yu and Zhongshuan? Apart from the Book of Ian, there were also the 3 threads of celestial power in his body. Thinking about that, Zhongshu had an idea. He nearly forgot that he still had the darkness blooming Sirius. Naturally, the darkness blooming serious in the past wasn't of much use. However, once it was watered with the creation death fountain, it was worth looking forward to. Thinking about that, Zhong Shou directly asked Shun Yuexian, that 9-hole life essence stone, can you craft it into an artifact embryo within 100 days without damaging its spirituality? Artifact embryo? Does your majesty want to borrow the power of this treasure? After Xin Yuexian was startled, he understood something. He took in a deep breath. That is a little tough. The main reason is that we don't have a suitable flame to craft it. However, the 9-hole life essence stone has 9 holes and is close to a natural god treasure. I could try to carve it first to try the Mahis Sex tool carving method. He knew that Zhong Shou had the Book of Ian that could speed up time. Therefore, he knew what was going on when he heard the words 100 days. 100 days was more than enough. Zhong Shou nodded slightly when he heard that. The so-called weapon crafting technique was a branch of the Mahis sect in the Cloud Desolate era. It believed that everything in the world had its own properties. He couldn't forcefully mix and refine it. Instead, he should develop it based on the original foundation. He used the sculpting method to trigger the laws contained within various substances. But because the requirements for craftsmen and materials were too harsh, it was lost in the end. However, it was not a bad idea to use this technique on the 9 Orifices Life Origin Stone. Actually, even if his spirituality was damaged, it wouldn't matter. In the end, his own life was more important. He could only let down Xian Shuang's master. He could already borrow power from the 9 Orifices Life Origin Stone that had been refined into an artifact embryo. Although he didn't cultivate the source life spirit breathing technique, his world's shocking spiritual art contained the essence of this technique. Who knows, he might be able to give those few people a surprise in the end. Then, what he needed to do now was to find a hidden place that wouldn't be disturbed by the dragon formation in the tomb and wouldn't be found by others. Then, he would go all out to turn the things he obtained into his own strength. Zhong Shou couldn't help but raise his head and look above. It seemed like he had to return to the fake tomb above. At this time, as long as one had some strength, they should have entered the stacked shrew tomb. Above should have calmed down. Even if they were disturbed, they would be able to deal with it in the blink of an eye and not cause any commotion. Next would be that sense-stealing spirit sense bug. He also needed to avoid the tracking ability of this bug, which was also a problem. Luckily, he only needed to hide for a day, so he should be able to do it. Thinking about it, Zhong Shou had a thought, and a purple-red sandalwood appeared in his hand. After it burned, smoke spread out. Zhong Shou used his strength to restrict the 5 of them. This was something he had obtained from Kong Rue, from his father-in-law. Zhong Shou obtained many good things here and there. The item in his hand was known as the evil warding purple incense. It could give out a special scent that humans couldn't smell. Only ant beasts could sense it, and all other bugs and ants hated it. Even the scent-stealing spirit sense bug was no exception. His scent couldn't be totally covered. Then, he might as well make that bug not want to search for him. Unfortunately, although the evil warding purple incense wasn't the top treasure in the world, there weren't many of them in the world. The reason why he didn't hesitate to use the smoke to cover the 5 of them was because of Zhong Shou. Zhong Shou wasn't sure whose aura the bug had locked onto, especially Su Xiao. He had to be wary of her. The latter probably knew what Zhong Shou was thinking about. Her face was filled with grievance. However, she was really well behaved. She knew that if she went against him, Zhong Shou would suspect her and even want to kill her. She tried her best to hide the shock and confusion in her eyes. Was this Wushang Yuan demon's method? However, since he wanted to kill Zhong Shou, then why did he release her to Zhong Shou's side? She felt that something wasn't right, like she had forgotten something in her memory. However, thinking about it, she couldn't remember anything. She only felt really uneasy. Returning to the Qin Emperor tomb was much easier than entering. In just a moment, the 5 of them had retreated to the upper level. Then, Shen Yuexian found a secluded room to hide in. Using the illusionary heart mirror and Zhong Shou's illusionary technique, the chances of others noticing them were really small. The evil warding purple incense continued to wrap around and cut off the aura of the five of them. Once everything was settled, Zhongsho directly took out the Book of Ian. He laughed coldly as he looked at Su Xiao. Then he broke all the celestial stones that he had snatched and guided the spiritual energy within into the god artifact Taoist book. This time, Zhongsho didn't care about consumption and chose to use 100 times the time difference. One day turned into 100 days. The Book of Ian Extreme Life? Su Xiao's eyes were filled with shock. She also knew the meaning behind Zhongsho's gaze. It was both a warning and also a threat. She instantly felt really sad. Luckily, before she used the Yuan Demon 7 emotion technique, she had expected such a situation. This was why Su Xiao wasn't too disappointed and still smiled. This book that many people dream of is actually in your hands. Outsiders don't even know about it. How unexpected. She was shocked to notice the time changes around her and her pupils constricted. Time acceleration, 100 times difference? So that is the case. My Yuan Demon 7 emotion technique can be raised by half a level. Zhongsho didn't bother. Did no one notice about the Book of Ian? That might not be the case. Zhong Weiran charged into Ian Dragon Canyon alone, and after he retreated, he hid in the Oblivion Cloud Ocean. The various sects paid close attention to the location of the Book of Ian and the mystery of Zhong Weiran's life and death. At this moment, Zhong Weiran didn't fall and stepped into God Realm in a short few years. News of that had spread back to the Cloud World. The various sect leaders weren't fools. Not only were they not, but they were all unparalleled talents who could guess the whereabouts of the Book of Ian. The reason why they didn't try to snatch it was because they didn't have a chance. Secondly, after the common people's vast habitat battle, the experts of the various sects were terrified and didn't dare to try. The Saint Realm cultivators' Dao paths were already set. Apart from their cultivation methods being related to time, the others didn't have much desire for this god artifact book. As for the others, most of them knew that they weren't strong enough and gave up on such thoughts. This was why he had fewer and fewer worries when using this artifact. Zhongsho directly entered meditation. He separated the three darkness blooming Sirius from his soul ocean and slowly moved them out of his Shunshao acupoint. A moment later, when Zhongsho opened his eyes once more, he saw three black flower buds appear in his hands. Maybe it really craved and loved this environment. As soon as it appeared, the black flower bud began to greedily absorb the cold power in the surroundings. Right away, Zhongsho forcefully suppressed the swallowing instinct of the Sirius. The vengeful energy, filled with darkness energy, could help the growth of the darkness blooming Sirius. However, after all, it was something that needed to merge into his soul ocean. Absorbing the vengeful energy would only affect the purity of his soul. Those three Sirius were unable to absorb the vengeful energy here and also broke away from Zhongsho's soul ocean. In just an instant, the epiphyllum showed signs of decay. Zhongshoxin used his spiritual sense, and a porcelain bottle appeared beside him. When the 3 drops of creation death, fountain water, dripped onto the darkness blooming Sirius, the flower buds instantly swelled, and many weird spiritual patterns appeared on the petals. Like a person who had been thirsty for a long time meeting rain. Without any hesitation, it sucked all the creation death, fountain water, into the sealed heart of the flower. Black spiritual light flashed as it was nourished by the liquid that contained the 2 opposing elemental energies of life and death. More and more spiritual patterns appeared. The originally pure black color started to fade, and the corners slowly turned pure white. As time went on, the flower buds became more and more beautiful. This creation death fountain is really beneficial to this darkness blooming Sirius. As expected, it is a huge nourishment item. Zhongsho was pumped up. Just 1 drop was able to cause such a change in the Sirius epiphyllum. Looking at the effects, at most 49 days for the Sirius to mature and complete the mutation. 1 drop a day, so he only needed a total of 147 drops. There was a total of 1,200 drops of creation death found water. Gong Shinran really wanted to exchange for all of it. However, the five of them had pretty much taken all of her wealth, and there was nothing that could move her. Secondly, Zhongshou was afraid that the fountain water wasn't enough to complete the mutation, which was why he left a full 400 drops. At this moment, it seemed like it was more than enough. There was still more than half left. The darkness blooming Sirius only needed to be watered and then kept into his soul ocean to nourish it with his spiritual sense. He didn't need to worry about anything else and just waited for it to grow on its own. Zhongshou continued to look into his body. He was prepared to use the remaining time to strengthen the celestial power in his body. However, thinking about the extra creation death fountain water, Zhongshou was in deep thought. Life and death essence energy. He had also merged life and death laws into his soul true image. Could he use this death fountain water? Chapter 11:22. The creation death fountain had the power of life and death. Absorbing it might increase one's cultivation, but might also turn one into a half-alive, half-dead monster. However, what Zhongshou wanted was the life and death laws within. After billions of years of nurturing, what was originally an ordinary fountain water had slowly become a god item. There were definitely numerous law essences condensed within. However, what he wanted to understand was how the two opposing powers of life and death coexisted. Zhongshou sucked a drop of creation death fountain water into his finger and used his spiritual sense to sense it. He slowly frowned. The liquid was merged into one, life and death essence power mixed. It wasn't difficult to identify the structure inside, but it would probably take over 100 years to figure out what was inside. Zhongshou shook his head. That was not worth it. Even if he left the Qin Emperor tomb, he wouldn't do that as it was too much of a waste of time. No, there should be a flaw within. The moment his spiritual sense left, Zhongshou recalled that the creation death fountain in his hand was just a substandard product formed by luck. Although the effects were similar, since it forcefully merged life and death into one, it was impossible. It was impossible for it to be as stable, perfect, and truly harmonious as those natural objects. Immediately, he poured more divine sense into it and filtered out the law of spirit runes contained in it bit by bit. Moments later, Zhongshou was delighted. He didn't hesitate to use true qi to activate it. This caused the flaws and disharmony to suddenly explode and magnify infinitely. Then, there was a chain reaction. The laws within started to collapse bit by bit. Life and death powers started to clash with one another. They repelled one another and even cancel one another out. In just a short breath, the creation death fountain in Zhongshou's hand turned into a bubble. After it dissipated, it scattered into the air and disappeared. Zhongshou's brow was filled with surprise. This was the effect he wanted. After it exploded, it caused the laws within to clash and the powers to go against one another. Many spiritual pattern structures would appear on their own. The mysteries of life and death merging would be fully displayed in front of his eyes through the process of the fountain water disintegrating. Unfortunately, there are just too many things hidden within. So many that even if he used his spiritual sense to memorize, he couldn't remember much and didn't comprehend much. Just like when he viewed the scenes of the absolute beginning. Even if he used thousands of years of lifespan to experience the scenes of the world viewing platform once more, he remembered less than 1% of what he saw. The rest could only be deduced and calculated in the future. The creation underworld spring was naturally incomparable, but also contained boundless profundities. However, this time he still had 200 drops of death found water that he could use until he could comprehend the secrets of life and death within. Luckily, it is the creation death found water found water. If it is death found water, I would have been unable to do anything. Life and death fountain, life and death found water, and death, life and death mysteries of life, and life and life and life and life and life and death mysteries. In his previous life, the last thing he practiced was the Styx River Death Sword, which borrowed the power of death to injure his enemies. In this life, Due to Lin Xuanchuang using the spiritual dream-inducing technique, his attainments in life power and life god technique were deeper. However, the knowledge that he obtained was forcefully injected into him. Many of the life mysteries that Lin Xuanchuang comprehended were things that he couldn't understand. His understanding of the power of death was even more shallow. The death sword intent that he grasped was still at the late soul realm. At this moment, using the death fountain water, not only were the mysteries of life that Lin Xuanchuang injected into him being solved one by one, there were also hundreds and thousands of death laws that were hard to comprehend and sense that Zhongsho's spiritual sense was able to see. As for the secret of the coexistence of the power of life and death, the bride who had been stripped of all her clothes was completely revealed before his eyes. Greedily deducing and comprehending all of this, who knows how long passed until he couldn't comprehend anything anymore. Zhongsho slowly woke up. The tomb room was totally dark. However, Zhongsho calculated and knew that a day had passed since he entered this state. How magical! If I can comprehend it, I might be able to grasp a strong ability. His Tao foundations weren't life and death laws. The power that he comprehended could only be used as an ability. At this moment, the other 4 people in the tomb room were all busy with their own matters. Shen Yuexian was already carving the 9-hole life essence stone. As for Su Xiaoxiao, she was absorbing the vengeful essence. The so-called 7 emotions were joy, rage, sadness, joy, love, evil, and lust. The so-called 6 desires were seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, touching, and intent. It was a person's desire for food and life. As for passion, the 7 emotions and 6 desires were one and were tough to split. Gong Shinran took out the vengeful essence. Legend had it that it was the vengeful essence that was gathered by the dead spirits. Su Xiaoxiao absorbed large amounts of vengeful energy, and it could greatly strengthen the Yuan Demon 7 emotion technique. At this moment, Osamu Hara was focused on crafting talismans. His 10% vengeful essence had been exchanged for many materials from Gong Shinran, many of which were beast hides. Chu Xue was also focused on her meditation, and her expression was serious. It was obvious that she was also shocked by the news about Gong Shinran not long ago. While working hard to purify her true qi and soul to raise her cultivation, she was fully focused on comprehending the Blood Moon Blade. With this little brat's comprehension, it was best not to have too much hope. However, if she was able to comprehend something, it would be enough to surprise him. Chu Xue awakened spirit and martial arts merger after grade 7. Although she couldn't form celestial power like Zhongsho, the strength of her heaven and earth far exceeded that of cultivators of the same grade. Every time her control of the Blood Moon Blade increased, her combat strength would increase by a little. Zhongsho took a look and didn't bother much. He still took out the 3 darkness blooming Sirius and dripped the creation death fountain water on them. Luckily, he woke up in time and didn't miss the time to water the Sirius, otherwise he would have a headache. When they matured and mutated, they lacked the supply of essence energy. These 3 Sirius would most probably fall into a state where they lacked essence energy. Just like that, every 48 hours, he would water them with the death fountain water. Then, he would consume a drop of creation death fountain water to meditate and comprehend. 49 days passed in the blink of an eye. The darkness blooming Sirius became whiter and whiter. Within the whiteness, there was a little pink color. One couldn't tell that these 3 darkness blooming Sirius had absorbed large amounts of life and death energy. They were nourished by the purest, vengeful energy and grew from the darkest places. They were brimming with life and also had a thick death energy. At the start, there were numerous spiritual pattern threads on the surface, but in the end, they slowly disappeared. 49 days later, the flower bud had shrunk even more tightly and had completely sunk into silence. Zhongsho knew that the darkness blooming Sirius had accumulated enough strength and started to mutate. When it bloomed once more, it would be the day of completion. Zhongshoxin was in a daze, but he still focused on studying the creation death fountain water. At the start, Each drop that exploded would take him a full day to digest. At this moment, he only needed 4 hours to consume a new drop of creation death fountain water. This was because he had already grasped the mysteries within. At this moment, he was using the creation death fountain water to make up for what he lacked. On the 60th day, Zhongsho woke up for a short moment. Oh, someone has already broken into the main tomb? How quick! 60 days after the spellbook sped it up was only 14 to 14 hours outside. Breaking through the layers of obstructions and entering the main tomb, one could imagine how strong they were. However, at this moment, Zhongsho could feel that there were numerous things coming to life under the layers, amongst which there were a few strong auras that were comparable to Saint Realm. Is it those terracotta warriors? Zhongsho shook his head. No, it shouldn't be just that. He only knew that at this moment, everyone in the real tomb below was probably in big trouble. Breaking into the main tomb was like poking a hornet's nest. Zhongsho felt really uneasy. He felt that the early opening of the Qin Emperor tomb might cause a huge calamity for the living beings of the Cloud World, especially when he comprehended more life and death power. He could clearly sense the location of the main tomb, like there was a really strong heart that was beating furiously and reviving. Gudong, Gudong. Zhongsho's brows were tightly furrowed. Was the Qin Emperor really not dead? Could he revive? What a joke. His heart was filled with questions. Zhongsho could only suppress it and meditate once more. This time, when the spiritual energy in the Book of Ian ran out, Zhongsho opened his eyes. Ian River Gathering, 9 Underworld Gate. This sword connects to the underworld, announcing your death. A giant death gate suddenly opened behind him. Zhongsho's body started to change. His hair instantly turned ashen white. The blood on his face drained, and the arm holding the sword dried up. However, different from before, when Zhongsho used the Styx River Death Sword in the past, he was a living person and independent of the Death Sword. This caused this sword technique to have a weakness that was hard to make up for. At this moment, he was totally merged into it. Along with the Styx River flowing, Zhongsho's body floated forwards like an illusion. The sword in his hand was indiscernible and indiscernible, filled with thick death power. After a few breaths, it stopped. When the Netherworld Gate closed. When the Death Gate closed, Zhongsho was revived from the dead. This is the life and death switching Dao. My Styx River Death Sword is at least 10 times stronger than Zhongsho's. Without the life and death switching technique, the Styx River Death Sword could at most be considered a grade 8 earth-destroying technique. After completing the life and death-changing technique, it was at least grade 11. That was because if one technique was understood, then all techniques would be understood. With Zhongsho's current sword path attainments, any sword technique in his hands just needed to be slightly modified, and he could turn it into a top technique. However, due to this weakness, Zhongsho was forced to give up on this Styx River Death Sword. Naturally, the benefits of comprehending the life and death merging technique were far from just this. The Styx River Death Sword was just one of them, and it was the most insignificant part. At the same time, Zhongsho also felt something. It has already matured. That darkness blooming Sirius should have matured half a month ago. However, he was too focused and didn't notice it. Chapter 1123. The mutated darkness Sirius was still pinkish-white in color. He couldn't see anything special about it. However, Zhongsho could feel that within the flower bud, there was a vast amount of energy that made one terrified. It continuously fluctuated, causing his soul sea to ripple along with it. I can't inject any more soul power? Roughly 60 days ago, Zhongsho tried to inject his soul power into it to store, but he was unable to store it within. He thought that it was because the Sirius was mutating, but now that the mutation was complete, it was still the same. This pinkish-white flower was unable to store soul power anymore. In the past, the Sirius would accumulate soul power in the soul ocean, and then when Zhongsho needed it, it would be released. However, now, who knows what kind of ability this mutated darkness Sirius would have? Zhong Shou frowned, suddenly feeling that he had made a mistake. The creation death fountain was able to help the darkness blooming Sirius evolve. However, he didn't think that the mutated Sirius might cause the ability that was useful to him in the past to disappear. I can only try. In the past, when the three Sirius bloomed and withered, it would take several months for them to recover. Who knew how it was now, but it would definitely take a lot of time. Although it was a waste to waste it, he couldn't use it when he didn't know what was going on. What if it was useless and might even harm him? Without much hesitation, Zhong Shou used his mind to activate one of them. Immediately, strips of flower petals bloomed one after another. The moment the flower bloomed, it was so beautiful. Zhong Shou didn't have time to admire the extreme beauty that blossomed in that instant. He felt a vast amount of essence, energy, suddenly surge out from the epiphyllum. It was the mixing of life and death energy, a power that reached the peak of darkness. It was similar to the 3 threads of celestial power that Zhong Shou had in his body, but it was also a little different. It was purer and more majestic. Zhong Shou could only feel that his body was about to split open. He didn't hesitate to wave a palm forwards. All the energy formed into the shape of a sword, and a pair of gray-white wings spread out behind his back. After a low thud, dust flew about and spread throughout the tomb. A full 10 breaths later, it started to dissipate. At this moment, the wall in front of Zhong Shou was broken open. An incomparably deep pit of unknown depth appeared before everyone's eyes. The few people present were stunned, but their expressions didn't change. With their cultivation, they could casually wipe out a giant mountain. Instead, they found it weird that Zhong Shou's aura so strong that it was close to Saint Realm. Why was there such a small commotion when he struck out with his palm blade? Was it because he didn't want to startle others? However, in the next instant, Yuan Wushang's expression changed. The living will die, and the dead will die. How? How did you do that? Only then did the 4 of them realize that something wasn't right. Everywhere Zhong Shou's sword light passed. Within hundreds of miles, from big pangolins to small bugs, they all died. There were no wounds on their bodies. The corpses of some bugs and ants. As long as they weren't badly damaged, they all came back to life. Sensing it, even the knowledgeable Shan Yuexian was shocked. This was pretty much stealing the luck of heaven and earth. Zhong Shou knew that those things that came back to life were injected with life energy. As long as the life energy dissipated, they would still die. Reversing life and death was something that even End Realm Saint Venerables couldn't do, much less him. However, after that strike, Zhong Shou roughly understood the ability of the Sirius. It was an unexpected surprise, far exceeding what he expected. The power of life and death was related to the changes of the Sirius. When it bloomed, it was when life energy was at its strongest. As long as one's soul wasn't wiped out, as long as there was a bit left, the vast life energy would allow one's soul to recover. No matter how heavy one's injuries were, they could be healed. To use it on oneself, one Sirius was one life. To other people, it was the same as a top life-saving celestial pill. In this world region, there were no more than 1,000 of them. As for the power of death, it would only erupt when the epiphyllum withered. It could be used to injure the enemy, similar to when Zhong Shou used celestial power. As for whether or not it could be stacked, Zhong Shou hadn't tried it before, so naturally, he wasn't sure. However, he knew that if he used his Styx River Death Sword, the level of this sword technique could instantly break through to grade 12 world destroying grade. It might even be half a step to Supreme Realm. When this sword slashed out, even if it was a Saint Realm Venerable, even if it didn't use King Path martial arts, he had enough confidence to try to kill it. Unfortunately, the recovery time of the Sirius also became longer. It needed a full year to recover to a usable state. In order to reach its peak, it would require 3 years of nurturing. The only way to speed up this process was to use the Creation Death Fountain. At this moment, thinking back to the 800 drops of fountain water that Gong Shinran exchanged, Zhong Shou couldn't help but feel regret. If he knew that this would happen, he definitely wouldn't have let Gong Shinran exchange for the fountain water. He couldn't give her a single drop. Sighing, Zhongsho took out 6 more drops of liquid and dripped it on the withered flower. These were the last few drops. The rest were used to comprehend life and death laws. As expected, not long after he watered it, the Sirius regained its life force and formed a flower bud. To fully recover, it needed 9 drops of creation death found water. This was why this Sirius probably only had 60% of its peak strength. Unfortunately, I don't cultivate the life and death Tao. If not, with the life and death change technique and these 3 Sirius, that Styx River Death Sword should be able to reach a higher level. It might even be able to reach grade 13. However, if I meet Han Qing, this sword technique will surprise him. Han Qing's against the Heaven Demon technique could go against the Slaying Sword intent, but it couldn't go against the life and death Tao. This sword technique was the true counter of this person. Zhongsho gave out a self-mocking laugh. If he could reach grade 13, then he didn't need to worry about anything and could directly charge for God Realm. After mutating, it can't be considered a darkness Sirius. It should be called a life and death Sirius. In this world, it is unique. Zhongsho was naturally delighted. With his trump card, he was really confident. Even if he faced those alien races, he would have the ability to fight. With the life and death Sirius, he could reduce the casualties to a minimum. Mr. Shun, is that thing formed? Shen Yuexian was still in shock. When he heard that, he came back to his senses and smiled. I didn't let you down. With a wave of his hand, he tossed the 9 whole life essence stone over. After Zhongsho caught it, the joy in his eyes grew thicker. As expected, Shen Yuexian did it. This 9 whole life essence stone was still an artifact embryo. However, Zhongsho could use the world's shocking spiritual art to draw out the life essence power hidden within. What was even more rare was that the spirituality of this item wasn't damaged. This meant that in the future, Xian Shuang could answer to his master. He could also use this item to exchange for more valuable things. He used the spiritual art, and instantly a layer of light covered the 5 of them. This is the power of the 9 whole life essence stone. Osamuhara looked at the floating jade stone beside Zhongsho. He suddenly slashed his arm with a sword. Then, everyone saw that the wound instantly healed. Celestial realm cultivators all had indestructible golden bodies and the ability to regrow flesh and blood. However, to be so quick was really rare. So quick! Chu Shui was speechless when she saw that. She wanted to cut herself, but she was afraid of pain, so she didn't do anything. Doesn't that mean that we won't die by the side of this jade stone? Osamuhara scoffed. I feel like my stamina is being consumed. It seems like this 9 whole life essence stone isn't omnipotent. At most, it can instantly heal non-fatal injuries and can't repair the damage to the foundations. Moreover, Brother Zhong, can your soul power take it? Zhongsho smiled helplessly and kept the spiritual art, dissipating the cold glow. Actually, it didn't consume much energy. However, if one had to fight with others at the same time, it would be tough. As such, it could only be used at crucial moments. However, knowing that there was a treasure that could heal injuries at any time, their expressions became much more relaxed. If they really couldn't win, then they would trade injuries for injuries. They would definitely have an advantage. At this moment, Zhongsho noticed that Su Xiaoxiao was startled, like her soul had left her body. Just based on the changes in her aura, he knew that this demon girl had improved a lot in 100 days. The Yuan Demon 7 emotion technique was even purer. Staying beside her, she didn't even need to use her mind, and one's heart would be in chaos. 7 emotions surged and desires intersected. Zhongsho was able to suppress it, but Osamuhara and the others purposely maintained a certain distance from Su Xiaoxiao. She couldn't control it and could use it freely. It was obvious that Su Xiaoxiao's improvement this time could be described as exaggerated. However, there was no joy on her face. Instead, her brows were filled with worry. Why did the saint girl enter a state of mind? Can you tell me about it? Su Xiaoxiao's eyes slowly regained focus as she looked at Zhongshuo's cold eyes. Just one look, and she knew that her spiritual altar had made Zhongshuo suspicious. However, during these 100 days, along with her Yuan Demon 7 emotion techniques cultivation increasing, she felt that something was wrong. That feeling of uneasiness was getting stronger and stronger. A thick bad omen wrapped around her heart and couldn't be shaken away. She felt that if she continued to follow by Zhongshuo's side, something tragic that she didn't want to see would happen. I feel a little weird and want to leave you for a period of time. I seem to have forgotten something recently. Maybe it has something to do with you and Yuan Demon. It's that. Before she was able to say the following words, she felt a sharp pain in her head. Su Xiaoxiao felt a sharp pain in her head, and the qi and blood in her chest were rolling, as if she was about to die. When she recovered, Su Xiaoxiao's eyes were filled with confusion. What did she say? What did she want to say? Leave? Zhongshuo laughed coldly. Following him these few days, she learned so much about him. Was she planning to leave at such a time? Was she going to give up on this ambush, or was she going to send news to those people? This was something that he definitely couldn't allow. Forcefully keeping this woman by his side was the safest choice. He didn't reply right away. Zhongshuo turned around. He noticed that the evil warding purple incense that was burning outside of the Book of Ian's range had turned to ashes. Chapter 1124. We have found it. In the depths of the underground palace, behind a certain red-robed man, two blue-eyed, barefoot cultivators let out cries of pleasant surprise, as if a heavy burden had been lifted from their shoulders. At this moment, between the two of them, there was a dark red bug that was roughly a foot long and had a pair of wings on its back. It was flapping its wings and crying out. A person was using a spirit art to control the fragrance, stealing spirit goo. The other person was listening attentively. The bug was fierce, which was why there were very few people in the world who could control it. People who could recognize the bug language were also rare, less than 1 in 10 million people. Weird, the location that this stealing fragrance, spiritual sense bug identifies is 1 level above. Above? You were talking about the fake tomb? Han Qing's expression was filled with surprise. Who would have thought that when the tomb was about to be opened and the 12 copper men were about to appear, Zhongshuo and the others would retreat? It seems like they are really wary. The red-robed man laughed weirdly. This kid has the Book of Ian and can speed up time. Since he sensed danger, he would most probably use the book to prepare some other methods to deal with the calamity. While speaking, he looked at the black skin knight demons with wings on their backs, as well as the few people with fleeting bodies. One of them laughed coldly. We will definitely kill him. Then his tone changed. However, whether or not we can kill that Zhongshuo is something that Yuan Demon Saint Venerable is clear about. You won't disappoint us? Of course. The red-robed man nodded his head and retracted his arrogant attitude. All of you should know that Zhongshuan is from the Taoist faction of the Cloud World and also obtained the legacy of Shufu's Qi cultivator. The people around obviously knew a lot about the Cloud World and weren't surprised at all. Then, do all of you know that when Shufu left the Cloud World, the Qin Emperor placed restrictions on him? The red-robed man said flatly. Shufu was someone whose talents exceeded Long Ying 10,000 years ago. Long Ying could step into the Saint Venerable realm, so naturally, Shufu could too. However, as long as the restrictions weren't removed, his life and death would still be in the hands of others. That's why this person hasn't shown himself in the past 10,000 years. At this moment, Han Qing roughly understood the red-robed man's meaning. Martial Uncle Qi means that Inu is indeed here for the 12 bronze men. But Zhongshuan might not be like that. When the red-robed man heard this, he immediately chuckled. It's rare for you to be smart for once. Han Qing's face was ashen. He was dissatisfied, but he could only suppress it for the time being. Qi Hongyi also had limitless potential. He was the second person who had a chance to reach End Realm after Blood Saint Demon Lord. Usually, the two Saint Venerables would allow the demonic sect to have internal strife. But now, the demonic sect was in a precarious situation, and its foundation was severely damaged. Wushang Yuan demon wouldn't allow any form of internal conflict. The other people around him seemed to be deep in thought. That's right. Unsealing the restriction spell requires the use of the aura of the King Dao. However, Zhongshuan had always been loyal to the Taishang. He would do his best until his death. He doesn't seem like someone who would use the ruler. The red-robed man broke into a laugh. His voice was still soft and gentle. This is the use of the 8-9 soul training technique. Although the soul that is split off is still him, his personality might not be the same. Moreover, how would you know that when Zhongshuan served the Taishang, he didn't have any selfish motives? When a person dies, the coffin covers his coffin. We may not know what he was planning when he was alive. The person who spoke was stunned and then asked in confusion, "What does Zhongshuan's plan for the Qin Emperor tomb have to do with us killing Zhongshou?" Naturally, there is a connection. The red-robed man replied calmly, "It is just a battle between two dragons. One is a living dragon, and the other is a half-dead old dragon. I'm looking forward to it." Actually, there were other methods, but there was no need to mention them. After all, the 10,000 spirit energy body was really rare in the world. The demon sect had only found one in thousands of years. Thinking about it in his heart, the red-robed man's eyes were filled with doubt. The only weird thing was that that person was willing to pay such a price to kill Zhongshu here. Why was that? Entering the Qin Emperor main tomb once more, Zhongshu and the other four instantly felt that the situation was totally different from a day ago. The entire spirit gathering formation was activated and the broken talismans were all repaired. However, maybe because most of the strength was gathered in the main tomb, the few of them walked in the tomb path, and it wasn't as dangerous as yesterday. On the contrary, from the direction of the main tomb, strong spiritual energy waves spread out. Even from 100 miles away, one could sense the ripples. However, Zhongshu was holding a message talisman and was in deep thought. The talisman was sent by Zhang Huai, using a secret technique to spread thousands of miles, forcefully passing through the dragon formation and entering his hands. Just thinking about it, one knew that Zhang Huai had paid a huge price. Apart from Zhang Huai's judgment of the situation, there was also Kong Rui's words. Looking at the sky, there might be a calamity? Did he mean that Zhongshu's trip to the Qin Emperor tomb might be fatal? What followed were all apologies. The heavens were in chaos. Kong Rui only noticed after it happened. It was the imperial astronomer's fault for not reminding him in time. He also gave a suggestion that retreating was a calamity and advancing was a calamity. If he retreated now, he could keep his life, but it would also cause a calamity. Taishang might be the first to bear the brunt, but Gan wouldn't be any better in the future. That would be a calamity for the world. If he advanced, it would be his own calamity, and he might not be able to stop that calamity from happening. In other words, whether he advanced or retreated was his own choice. Zhang Huai was also at his wit's end. He didn't know what was going on in the tomb, so it was tough for him to make a judgment. He only told him what he had learned from the sect in the past few days. However, although this news seemed useless, it really helped him a lot. Zhongshu frowned. Shufu, Qin Emperor. What exactly happened when the Qin dynasty was destroyed 10,000 years ago? Could the Qin Emperor really come back to life and rule the world once more? Was this a storm caused by him? A butterfly that shouldn't have existed? 10,000 years ago, such a thing didn't happen. Although the situation was dangerous, knowing all of this was better than being caught off guard when things came to a head. If he knew where the danger came from, then he would know how to deal with it. Firstly, it was Shuriwe. He didn't believe that this person didn't hear anything. Since he knew, then he definitely wouldn't sit still and do nothing. So, where was this person hiding now? He was the only person in the tomb apart from Tsang Shengdao and the Kinzo sect that he could borrow strength from. However, what should he do now? Shaking his head, Zhongshu stopped his thoughts. He wasn't good at scheming. What Zhongshu was best at was using strength to break the situation. Did he want his life? Then, let's give it a try. Chapter 1125. The talismans spread among the few of them. Even the pure-hearted Chu Shui's face turned ashen white. How is your majesty prepared to deal with this? Shen Yuexian frowned. He felt more and more that the situation in the tomb was really weird and dangerous. If that Qin emperor really did come back to life, the 20 million corpse army in the tomb would still listen to his orders. Unless the few end realm experts of the cloud world worked together, they would have the ability to sweep the world once more. Zhongshou and a few of them were also in danger of dying. I think that for safety reasons, we should back out and wait for the changes. There is no need for that. Zhongshou squinted and a cold smile appeared in his eyes. Even if we overestimate, the demon sect and the two alien races have at least 6 to 8 saint realm experts working together. To Mr. Shun, what are the chances of them taking my life? Shen Yuexian took in a deep breath and didn't speak. Osamu Hara smiled. I can't see 10%. Zhongshou and Chu Shui both had the ability to fight against God Realm cultivators. The former had the Book of Ian and the Illusionary Heart Mirror. The Book of Ian controlled time. The Illusionary Heart Mirror countered the Shadow Demon. And the Unlimited Beginning and End Dharma was something that the Night Demon race feared deeply. Chu Shui had the Blood Moon Blade God artifact and was also someone who could fight against Saint Realm experts. His own Jade Puppet was also extremely strong. As for Shen Yuexian, others might not know, but he had spent several months in Tianfeng World and knew that even Yi Xian recognized him. The enemy might be strong, but he definitely wouldn't be able to do that and make them unable to escape. Thinking about that, Osamu Hara instantly comprehended something. This was really weird. After the demon sect and the Qian made peace, they should have had 100% confidence in killing Zhongshou in the tomb. Either he was prepared and was really confident, or he had other plans and could borrow the strength of others. The possibility of the former was extremely small. Li Bieshue was prepared, but they were also far away. Didn't they have their own trump cards? Even he himself was far more powerful than a mere jade puppet. The risk was extremely high. What was left was that there was something in the tomb that made Wushang Yuan Demon think that Zhongshou had no chance of leaving alive. Even you and I are aware of this, so it's impossible for Li Bieshue to not understand. Zhongshou said as he sorted out his thoughts. Then, the only ones who have the ability to trap and kill us are the 12 Copper Men and the Qin Emperor, who might revive. Without the Qin Emperor, even though there were tens of millions of corpse soldiers, hundreds of thousands of great Qin cavalry, and millions of Big Dipper swordsmen in the tomb, they were like scattered sand, unable to truly pose a threat. Zhongshou had another thought and stopped. He realized that he was being a little too stubborn. Why should he follow his opponent's moves and think of a solution? Who cared about their schemes? He didn't need to bother at all. I was wrong. This chess game is unclear, and I don't know how to solve it. Then, let's just get rid of the chess player first. This was truly using strength to solve the game. Naturally, he couldn't do anything to Li Bieshue. However, this Saint Venerable needed someone to control everything in the tomb. Get rid of the chess player? Osamu Hara muttered. His eyes slowly lit up. No matter what Wushang Yuan Demon was planning, the few demon sect experts that Gong Shinran mentioned were the foundations of everything. So, Brother Yuan thinks that we can't do it with the few of us. Of course we can. Osamu Hara smiled and said excitedly, Interesting, this is really interesting. Zhongshou, I really did misjudge you. This is so satisfying. This plan is feasible. Shen Yuexian opened his eyes. No matter what scheme, it is best to get rid of the person who set it up first. His ruler was really full of surprises. His way of dealing with the enemy was really sharp and decisive. Zhongshou frowned. He had already decided on the plan, but he had to find the location of those people first. Shen Yuexian knew what he was thinking and said flatly, I do have a way to find them. He waved his hand, and instantly 48 mechanical wooden birds spread out into the tomb. Its speed was comparable to the fastest spirit bird. It was as fast as lightning and disappeared in the blink of an eye. With just one look, Zhongshou could see that these 48 hummingbirds had Chun Yueshuan's spiritual sense on them, as well as the 1,000 Mile Eye spell. Although the spell was of a low grade, it was really stable. The spiritual energy fluctuations were really small, and if one was careful, one could avoid the dragon formation. On the mechanical woodbirds, there was also a special powder scattered on them. Celestial World was one of the places that the shadow demons often entered. As long as one had some strength, they would have the ability to identify and defend against the shadow demons. This powder was refined from a type of spirit medicine known as radiant Brahma grass, and it could sense the mutated soul power of a shadow demon. As long as one wasn't at the saint realm and was still at the formless realm, it would be tough for one to avoid it. Actually, the tracks of the few saint realm experts were really easy to find. Within this ancient tomb, there were so many saint realm experts gathered together, and there was only one group. One could find out from the destruction of the various mechanisms and restrictions, as well as the darkness aura of the night demon race. The reason why the 5 of them didn't personally search and use the mechanical woodbirds to replace was to make those few people wary. 45 minutes later, Shan Yuexian, who was fully focused on sensing, finally opened his eyes. It was obvious that he had gotten something. It should be here, within the North Tunnel. We are 10 miles away and can't get any closer. At the same time, several spiritual senses spread out. It caused several scenes to appear in Zhongshuo's mind. The Ming fan grass powder shown and the 30,000 corpse army in this tunnel didn't show any signs of abnormalities. However, the restrictions and mechanisms that were all wiped out. Thinking about it, Zhongshuo knew that Shun Yueshuan's words were true. If one compared it to Zhongshuan's map, one would know that the north of here was where the main tomb's ventilation duct was. They could also enter the main tomb, but it was more hidden. Looking down from above, they could see all the movements of the legendary small world. That wooden woodbirds couldn't get any closer, otherwise they would be at risk of being noticed. This time, they had the element of surprise. If they were alerted, they would be bad. Osamu Hara asked the second problem. Now that we know where it is, how do we get over? The bug locked on his Zhongshuo's aura. Although the feeling was really blurry, Zhongshuo was still able to sense it. However, the moment they got close, the bug would sense them. Zhongshuo scoffed coldly. In this Qin Emperor tomb, if it was anywhere else, he wouldn't be able to do anything. However, the restrictions of the dragon formation in this direction had all been cleared, giving him the opportunity to do so. Was the heavens helping him today? Close to 200 Dao seed stars appeared in his heart and spread out in all directions. A portion of them gathered around them, surrounding them. A portion of them just happened to appear where Shun Yueshuan's wooden hummingbird was. They moved slightly forwards and stopped 5 miles away. In the past, Zhongshuo's instant space dragon pellet could only teleport him. However, since the number of stars increased to 187, the instant space transference divine ability could be used on other people as well. However, it needed many star Dao seeds to be gathered together, and the teleportation distance couldn't be too far. Naturally, if it was just this distance, it wouldn't be a problem. Just 5 miles was enough for the enemy to not be able to react. Zhongshuo's gaze swept across Su Xiaoxiao. Her expression was weird, but she was forcing herself to be calm. He couldn't help but laugh coldly as the 72 dragon pellets around him moved. A strong power instantly pulled the 5 of them into the space-time layer. When they appeared once more, they were in a different tomb. Below, there were 30,000 perfectly fine terracotta figures. At this moment, due to sensing the aura of living people, numerous cracks started to appear on the surface of the terracotta figures. Instant space teleportation. Osamu Hara instantly understood his current situation. He used his dermic powers to suppress his maniacal laughter. I forgot about this divine ability that ruler created himself. It seems like it is hard for the trash in front to not die. He also knew that there wasn't much time left. The jade puppet led the way, crossing several miles in a breath before punching forwards. At the same time, numerous talismans shot out from Osamu Hara's hands. They were the talismans that he made during the day. Zhongshuo's movement speed wasn't slow either. The 190-10 Extreme imperial Dao dragon tooth swords danced and flew out from his sleeves. In an instant, they formed a 10 extreme imperial Dao destruction sword formation as they swept forwards. At the same time, a hand pointed towards the back of Su Xiaoxiao's head. Killing intent was hidden within. If this demon girl dared to resist, then this finger could turn into a lightning strike at any moment. In the past, he couldn't do it because he didn't have enough reason and couldn't convince himself. Looking at this moment, it concerned the life and death of the four of them. His sword wouldn't show any mercy. Even if it was a girl that could make him fall in love, he wouldn't have any thoughts of holding back. In his last life, he roamed the world with one sword. When did he have feelings for girls? Out of the four of them, which one of them wasn't more important than Su Xiaoxiao, who was hard to differentiate between friend and foe? What was unexpected was that Su Xiaoxiao didn't resist at all, allowing Zhongshuo's finger to hit her. She instantly fainted and fell downwards. Zhongshuo was stunned. Then he used his spiritual sense to wrap Su Xiaoxiao to his side. He knew that there was a huge problem, so he increased his speed. The celestial power in his body was already activated. The illusionary heart mirror floated behind him. Unlimited light appeared on the sword body and shone down on the path. The moment he made his move this time, he used all of his strength and struck out with his strongest sword strike. The moment this sword slashed out, Zhongshuo slowly retracted all his random thoughts and returned to Endrealm. He only focused forwards. Since he teleported over, a breath of time had passed. Those in front should have noticed him. Who knows what kind of expressions those Saint Realm venerables would have on their faces. 5 miles ahead, Han Qing didn't sense any killing intent at all. He was looking forwards in a daze. Their group had just arrived at this place. The moment they arrived, they were shocked by the majestic scenes in front of them. Chapter 1126. The place where the Qin Emperor was buried was beyond everyone's imagination. Judging from the outer area of the tomb, this main room was at most 1,000,000 feet wide. However, looking at it now, it was more than 3,000 miles. It was an independent small world. The abundance of spiritual energy exceeded that of any vast habitat or heavenly cave in the cloud world. It was totally different from the dark and dark outside, filled with evil energy. Within this world, the sun was shining brightly and the aura was really peaceful. There were numerous spiritual beasts living within, many of which went extinct during the cloud desolate era. Within, the mountains rose and fell, rivers crisscrossed. Looking out, one couldn't see the end. However, for some reason, although everything in front of him was peaceful, Han Qing felt that there were numerous dangers hidden within. He also suddenly understood that the true essence of the dragon formation should be here. At this moment, he wasn't the only one who was shocked. The people around were also shocked. However, they instantly came back to their senses. Looking at the geography of this place, it is modeled after Xianjing. Xianjing was the capital of the Qin dynasty and was located in the west of the cloud world. Had it fallen long ago? The geography of the ancient times was similar to this place. They all said that during the cloud desolate era, your cloud world spiritual items were the best in this region. The riches of one world could be compared to 300 medium-sized worlds. Those words were true. Within this world, there were numerous spiritual herbs. Spiritual herbs that were hard to find in the outside world could be seen everywhere here. When the red-robed man heard that, he laughed. He could hear the hatred and greed in the words of this Zizai god-demon. When the human race rose up to fight against the alien race, it started from the 3 emperors. However, at that time, the human race was struggling in the cloud world. They wiped out the alien race, but it was completed by the Qin Emperor, who was in a deep sleep. The few Saint Realm experts present mostly went through the war 10,000 years ago, which was why it wasn't surprising that they had hatred in their hearts. He didn't reply at all as he looked into the distance. With his cultivation, even if he didn't cultivate any eye-related abilities, he could see thousands of miles. Yinyu and Zhongshuan are already 300 miles in. However, Xianjing City is the most dangerous place and they won't be able to get in a short time. If Zhongsho did not want the 12 bronze statues to fall into the hands of the Taishang, he would definitely try his best to stop them. And I just need to wait here and seal this tomb to prevent that bloodsword beast lord from escaping. As he spoke, Qi Hongyi took out a talisman. What was different from the other captives was that the talisman had a winding black dragon drawn on it. It was like a living thing was about to fly out from the talisman. It actually resonated with the center of this small world. From the corner of his eyes, Qi Hongyi could see the looks of desire on the faces of the people here. He was too greedy. Although he was filled with disdain, the red-robed man still giggled. Qin Emperor reviving won't be able to recover to his peak in such a short time. At this moment, there were many experts in the tomb. How could he deal with them one by one? After we kill Zhongsho, if you have the ability, you can take whatever treasures you want from this tomb. As he said this, everyone's expressions gradually calmed down. They all knew the severity of the matter and knew that killing Zhongsho was the most important thing for this trip. Qi Hongyi looked towards Han Qing. I will give you an explanation for Su Xiaoxiao's matter later. Since she did such a thing, then even Yuan Demon won't be able to protect her. Han Qing was instantly pumped up. His bad feelings towards Qi Hongyi were instantly replaced by gratitude. Although Qi Hongyi's words were annoying, he treated him well. He couldn't help but grit his teeth and clench his fists. Han Qing's 10 fingernails pierced deeply into his flesh. Relying on the extreme pain, he was barely able to suppress his rage and murderous intent. Actually, he didn't need to bear with it for long, just one day. That bastard, that bitch. Just as he was thinking about this, Han Qing felt that something wasn't right. The sages present all frowned at the same time. They spread out their spiritual senses like they were sensing something. As for the 2 disciples who controlled the thief fragrance spiritual goo, their expressions were also very strange. They looked like they wanted to say something, but stopped. Han Qing frowned and asked directly, "What is going on?" The person who could listen to the bug spoke after hesitating slightly. Just now, the bug sensed that Zhongsho is nearby. Behind us, the other person said with a weird tone, "I feel that it is really uneasy, like it is warning us." When he first heard this, Han Qing felt that it was preposterous. Not long ago, Zhongsho was confirmed to be 100 miles away. So how could he be so close to them? Uneasy? Warning? At this moment, there were more than 7 Saint Realm experts present. Apart from the person in the tomb who still hadn't woken up, who else could threaten them? However, in the next moment, Qi Hongyi's face turned vicious and his eyes turned red. His robe fluttered without any wind. What a bloodsore monster lord! How amazing! Along with his voice, there was a loud explosion. The entire wall behind him was forcefully smashed by a giant power. However, hundreds of talismans flew into the room. One could hear a laugh from the distance. Explode. The hundreds of talismans instantly shattered. All the spiritual energy within 1,000 feet of this place was triggered by a strange force and exploded. 5 elements spiritual energy, each and every one of them, even the small spiritual energy particles, couldn't avoid it. The vast power within was unleashed, and in an instant, the land within a radius of dozens of miles was completely razed to the ground. It caused the earth layer above to collapse, and even the dragon formation was badly damaged under the impact. Numerous restrictions spread over and gathered towards this area, crazily repairing the holes and wiping out all the unharmonious things. All of a sudden, close to 60% of the power of the entire formation was thrown in here. That tyrannical force crushed over, causing Han Qing's breathing to become slightly labored. As for the few demon sect disciples with lower strength, they had already turned into dust along with the stealing fragrance spiritual parasite the moment the explosion started. 10,000 spirit extinction ability. You are Osamu Hara. Qi Hongyi scoffed furiously. At this moment, only Osamu Hara could draw this 10,000 spirit extinction explosion talisman in the cloud world. Han Qing's mouth and nose seeped blood. Numerous spiritual energy exploded, The power produced was simply too strong. With his against the heaven demon ability, he was unable to fully reflect it and was heavily injured. At this moment, that maniacal laughter spread out once more. Silence. When the spiritual words were spoken, all the remaining spiritual energy within 100 miles of this place returned to dead silence and dissipated. It caused the spells that the people here prepare to shake intensely and nearly dissipate. Luckily, God realm experts and above had opened up their inner heaven and earth and didn't need external help. Taken out from their bodies, they could still maintain their spells. However, in the next instance, a red sword light was the first to enter. It gave out an unlimited amount of light, causing one to instinctively close their eyes. They were definitely covered in burns. Then, those few night demons all gave out hysterical cries. Their skin gave off smoke, and under the shine of the light, their blood started to rot. The few shadow demons were also shown on the spot by the light, unable to move at all. The sword light pierced through the air and pointed at one of the night demon race Saint Realm venerables who had been struck by the talisman and endless light. Chi Hong-yi scoffed coldly and wanted to head over to help that person block the sword. However, just at this moment, millions of sword lights swept over. Strands of extremely sharp sword chi crisscrossed and tore the void apart. One of them was a blood-red blade light, which was hidden within. The aura was really dark like it had locked onto him, but he was unable to grasp its trajectory. Chi Hong-yi was startled and had no choice but to give up on helping. Instead, he retreated dozens of feet and waved his sleeves. A giant whirlpool formed in front of him. It caused everything in the air 1,000 feet above to swirl, forming hundreds of wind eyes. The huge wind intersected with one another and protected him. All the sword energy that slashed onto it collapsed. Chi Hong-yi pointed out with a finger, passing through the wind and coincidentally landing on the tip of the blood-red blade. Chu Shui's 7 orifices bled, and her body spun like a top. She flew backward, the vital energy in her body spiraling like it was about to be tossed out. Just relying on a low-grade god artifact, do you really think you can fight against Saint Realm venerables? Chi Hong-yi laughed coldly as he looked in another direction. His face was ashen white. First, under the strong attacks of the puppet, the few Saint Realm experts were all forced aside. That sword pierced through at a speed that exceeded the limits of this world and was just a few feet away from the throat of the night demon venerable. After the sword light, a person followed like a shadow. His hands were empty, but there were 8 metal cylinders on both sides of his body. Who knows what they were, but their auras were really dangerous. Right away, he recognized that this was one of the helpers that Zhongsho recruited. He was from Ma's faction, but he was only a god realm. However, at this moment, the feeling that he gave off was even more shocking than a Saint Realm venerable. Book of Eon Life, Space Acceleration. His eyes flashed across the blue book beside Zhongsho. Chi Hong-yi's pupils constricted, and he tossed out a dark brown crystal. When the spiritual light shone, it filled the room. The accelerated time returned to normal. Zhongsho's extremely quick sword technique also slowed down. Chi Hong-yi's heart sank and knew that no matter what, he wouldn't be able to save the night demon venerable. This sword was so shocking that if it was some other time, even he would have to go all out to face it. He decided not to bother, flashing towards where Zhongsho was at. Surround Wei to save Zhao. If he couldn't save Zhao, then he would capture the king. When Zhongsho slashed out, he went all out and didn't defend himself at all. As long as he was beside the Bloodsore monster lord, he would be able to capture him easily. Even if he couldn't, he could force Zhongsho to retract his sword. However, he saw Shun Yuexin laugh coldly as he looked over. The 8 silver cylinders beside him exploded. Millions of 5-colored needles shot out like a peacock spreading its tail, dazzling one's eyes. Chi Hong-yi's expression changed, and more wind eyes formed in front of him. However, with a light the sword that gave off an unlimited amount of light had already stabbed into the body of the night demon venerable. That you're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.